right. You ready, Roger?
Ready, Your Honor.
Okay, so council will stand in session. Roll call.
Nick Santa Cruz.
Here.
Mr. Cunningham.
Here.
Mick Zulik.
Here.
Mr. Fimbres.
Here.
Mr. Kozaczyk.
Here.
Mayor Romero.
She is absent. Excused.
Mayor Pro Tem Lee.
I am here. Item 2.
Invocation and appointments to boards, committees, and commissions.
The invocation will be given by Ana Marufo, staff member from the city clerk's office.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Let us pray. Dear God, thank you for bringing us to this meeting today. We pray for all the government officials gathered here, that you guide the mayor and council as they make decisions that will affect the lives of the city of Tucson residents. Grant them wisdom to make the right decisions without bias or prejudice. We pray that the mayor and council members work together to improve the quality of life of all affected by their decisions. Amen.
Thank you, Ana. Item 2D.
Appointments to boards, committees, and commissions.
City Manager's Communication number 329 dated November 9th is received into and made part of the record. Do we have a motion to approve the appointments?
So move. To approve
Second.
the appointment of James Tubby Lewis to be the Veterans Affairs Committee member, VAC.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, I would like to thank James Tubby Lewis for his willingness to serve in this capacity. With hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Are there any personal appointments to be made at this time? Item 3.
Mayor and council report, summary of current events.
City Manager's Communication number 330 dated November 9th is received into and made part of the record. This time has been scheduled to allow members of the mayor and council to report on current events. These are to be current events of activities within the community, not position statements on policy issues. Does any council member have anything to report at this time? We can do what Mayor Romero does, and we'll just go down, starting with Ward 1. Councilmember Santa Cruz.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Lee. I wanted to thank our 70 amazing community volunteers who came out for our 12th Avenue cleanup this past Saturday. Our volunteers, aside like the general community, but also included Pueblo High School and Sunnyside High School student councils, our partners with the Sunnyside Foundation, the Pima County Attorney's Office, Laura Conover, Tucson Clean and Beautiful, Avenidas Inc., the Arts Foundation, Barrio Restoration, and so many others who made this effort a success. We've also, we had our Transportation Art by Youth program that happened this summer, where young people created these beautiful planters. And so those can now be found along 12th Avenue, so if you would like to check them out. So I just want to thank, all our small businesses in the community for all their work in making sure that the South Side is litter free. Second, we have a Burritos and BC's event out of the Ward 1 office. It's the second Sunday ride that happens once a month. And so we meet here at the Ward 1 office at 9 a.m. We're changing to fall winter hours. It's usually 9 a.m. to around 10:30. So if anybody wants to join us. We have the Dusk Music Festival on November 13th and 14th at Jacome Plaza downtown from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. We know that the Dusk Festival is a 2-day community-oriented event that brings together music, food, and art that brings nationally recognized artists to our city. Finally, On Sunday, November 14th, there will, from 3 to 5 p.m., there will be a picnic del barrio at Esteban Park at 1001 North Main Avenue. And it's a picnic with Barrio Anita, Dunbar Neighborhood, Barrio Blue Moon, and the Bronx Park hosting this neighborhood picnic. And I know the Ward 3 office has been really involved in helping make this happen. And so they're just asking folks to bring a blanket, table, and chairs and some snacks and enjoy the Ward 1 Ready, Set, Rec van for some outdoor fun with everybody. And with that, those are all my announcements.
Sounds like a lot of fun in Ward 1. Councilmember Cunningham.
A few things. Number one is what's really exciting is that we are starting to see events happen again. We're actually starting to see people out and about. This past weekend, there were multiple things all day. I want to thank all the folks who came out to Fort Wool Park on Saturday to take a look at the master plan and the historic preservation. The Parks Department did a tremendous job being able to communicate with the community on what's coming down the road. But I found myself at 4 different parks this weekend, including Udall, Freedom Park. And while they all have some capital improvements that they need that are coming up because they're either in the bond or built into our CIP, they were in really good shape. And that was nice. And there they were. Also, congratulations to Davis Monthan on putting on a tremendous air show this weekend. Like I said, there's lots of events happening. I was going to talk about dusk. I think there's a reggae in the park event planned for February, but I think they may be having a drive run next week. You can check websites for that. So a lot of things are going on. We're kind of back into some semblance of a reopening, and I just hope that people stay safe and get a chance to enjoy their lives.
Councilmember Ulick.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Lee. Hey, I want to give a shout out of thanks to our Department of Transportation, Parks and Housing and Community Development, as well as staff from Tucson Clean and Beautiful and the Arts Foundation of Southern Arizona, who joined my team last week to offer coaching to the residents of Balboa Heights and Coronado Heights as they developed projects to put forward for back to basics investments. We received some great ideas, and it's wonderful to see some potentials for investing in those critical and wonderful neighborhoods in Ward 3, and also to have experts help us with feasibility and other cost information. So it was really a valuable experience, and thank you to everybody who devoted time to that effort. I also want to extend an invitation to the Sugar Hill Coalition's block party, Sunday, November 14th from 3 to 7 at Mansfield Park. In addition to great food and company, there will be planting of some new trees near the community garden in Mansfield Park. I also want to thank Mayor Romero for joining Ward 3 residents as we increase the valuable tree canopy in that area. Thank you.
Councilmember Finbrace.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. On Thursday, November 4th, I had the privilege of presenting the thank you cards and letters made by school children and classes for 34 schools in Ward 5 in Tucson. This was the 13th annual presentation made to the VA for cards and letters. Thank you, veterans, for their service, and also the staff of the VA, and to the Marshall Home for Men for their work, caring, and those veterans in need of medical care. This effort started with only three schools, and today we have 32 schools, which is quite amazing. Not only does it teach the young people about patriotism, it says a thank you to our veterans who need it. Join me were State Representative Andrea De Alessandro, South Tucson Mayor Bob Tesso, South Tucson Vice Mayor Herman Lopez, and Genesis Cabillos from Tucson Mayor Romero's office. I thank the following schools whose students and teachers worked on this for Veterans Day: Alta Vista, Banks Elementary, Blemon Elementary, Borden Elementary School, Carrillo K-5, CE Rose, Challenger Middle School, Cragen, Elementary School, Davis Bilingual Elementary, Doolin Middle School, Rackman K-8, Drexel Elementary School, Esperanza Elementary School, Gallego Intermediate, Liberty Elementary School, Los Amigos Teachers Academy, McCorkle, Mansfield, Mission View Elementary School, Los Otros Academy, Ochoa Community School, Ocotillo Early Learning Center, Our Mother of Sorrows, Public Gardens, Pre-K to 8, Roberts Naylor, K to 8, St. Peter and Paul's Catholic School, Santa Vera Mission School, Santa Cruz, St. Cyril's Alexandria School, St. John's Catholic School, St. Joseph's Catholic School, Tolleson, Wheeler Elementary, Wrights Elementary. I, along with Ward 5 staff, look forward again to this during Memorial Day weekend. On Saturday, November 6th, I had the privilege of attending the Veterans Festival at Gold Star Mothers Park, Family Park. I want to thank American Patriot Memorial and other organizations for putting this event together, veterans, which also had at the Davis Mountain Air Show. On Sunday, November 7th, 2021, Veterans Recognition Luncheon took place at the KC Club, 601 South Tucson Boulevard, recognizing those serving and had served this nation in the military. Thanks to SAIL, LULAC Foundation of Arizona, Project PEP, KC Club, 4B 46, AB 46 Investments, South Tucson, City of South Tucson, Dr. John Arnold, Lazarus Sylvan and Banks, Thomas Warren, Jim Rodriguez, Louis Valenzuela, Richard M. Pimenez, Yoyami, American Legion Post 125, Dan Ekstrom, Pascuayaki Tribal Nation, Vice Chair Robert Valencia, Councilmember Richard Pimenez, and the Ward 5 Council's Office, Tucson Sisters, and Tucson Troop Support. This event was able to take place to honor veterans. These veterans were recognized by Senator Mark Kelly, Congressman Raul Grijalva, Congresswoman Kirkpatrick, Governor Doug Ducey, Supervisor Adelita Grijalva, and Matt Hines, Tucson Mayor Regina Romero, Tucson Councilman Richard Pimenez, City of South Tucson, Tucson Troop Support, American Patriot Memorial, and the LULAC Foundation offices. I want to thank Alfredo Urbina, Pascuayaki Attorney General, U.S. Air Force Chief Master Sergeant Michael Reed, and Gold Star Mother Lorraine Obregon for their stirring words that they told those present. Finally, the City of Tucson's Environmental and Garden General Services Department hosts household hazardous waste materials collection events on the second Saturday of every month. The next one is Saturday, November 13th, from 8 a.m. to noon at the Rudy Garcia Rodeo Park, 5001 South Nogales Highway. Enter collection events on Irvington Road, east of North Nogales Highway. City residents can drop off HHW electronic waste, e-waste, paper documents, and shredding limited 3 boxes, and glass bottles and jars, and no charge. Unknown chemicals will not be accepted. For more information, you call 520-791-3175. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Kozaczek, anything tonight?
Couple things really quickly. First of all, on Saturday, September 13th, the Friends of Tucson Birthplace are hosting a Native American Arts and Food Festival out at the Mission Garden. It'll run from 9 until 2 p.m. It's all free, and they'll have music and food and lots of arts and crafts, and it'll be for sale out there. Jewelry, pottery, paintings, and a whole bunch more. So join them. And secondly, and finally, I would like to just publicly thank Ron Barber, who announced his retirement last week, effective at the end of the month. Ron has been serving as, among other things, most recently Senator Kelly's Southern Arizona Chief of Staff. And congratulations to Carla Alalos, who many of us know. She's taking Ron's place when he steps down. But Ron's got an excellent 54-year history of public service that is stellar, and I'd just like to thank him for all of the work that he's done and welcome Carla into the saddle.
Great. Perfect. Just a couple things from me. Happy Veterans Day to all those who served this Thursday. And another plug for our City of Tucson Employee Veterans Day Luncheon happening tomorrow. Mr. Ortega will be there with me. So these This is an event for employees of the city of Tucson who are military veterans. We're going to have lunch and talk about some employee resource group activities. That's at 11:30 to 1 at Operations Division West. If you've not already done so, please RSVP by shooting us an email at ward4@tucsonaz.gov. I also want to congratulate a couple folks from the city who made the Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Arizona Daily Star 40 under 40 list. That would be Amanda Bruno from Economic Initiatives and Steven Acevedo, a detective with TPD. So congratulations to you both and way to represent the city on that list. And I also just want to give a shout out to the clerk's office for, I know it was so much work with this last election, and just show some love to the clerk's office for everything you did. I know it was a crazy, crazy time. All right, let's move on to item 4.
City Manager's report, summary of current events.
City Manager's communication number 331 dated November 9th is received into and made part of the record. This time has been scheduled to allow the city manager to report on current events. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and members of the council. I have two things to report today. One is Liz Morales, our very own Housing and Community Development Director, was elected by her colleagues and peers to serve on the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials Board of Directors. And so that's a great honor for her, but also gives us an opportunity to interact as a community with other communities and housing development folks. So congratulations to Liz. I want to put a plug in for her. Also, don't normally talk about coffee with Mike, but tomorrow we do have a special guest, Adia Barnes, a coach of the women's basketball team, U of A women's basketball team, will be joining me, and she'll talk about leadership and kind of her journey. So I'd encourage you and everyone else that's interested in hearing from Adia, because she'll be on for about 30 minutes from 10 to 10:30 tomorrow. So that's all, Vice Mayor. Thanks for the opportunity.
Item 5.
Liquor applications report from City Manager.
City Manager's communication number 332 dated November 9th is received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, please read the liquor license agenda.
Your Honor, on this evening's liquor license agenda, under item 5B, we have 2 requests for new license, 1 request for owner location transfer. Under item 5C, we have 4 requests for special events. Staff has indicated that all the applicants are in compliance with city requirements. An appropriate motion would be to forward items 5B 1 through 3 and C 1 through 4 to the State Liquor Board with a recommendation of approval.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6.
Call to the audience.
At this time, the public is allowed to address the mayor and council on any issues except for items scheduled for a public hearing at this meeting. Speakers are limited to 3-minute presentations. Call to the audience is scheduled to last for 30 minutes. Pursuant to the Arizona Open Meeting Law, individual council members may ask the city manager to review the matter, ask that the matter be placed on a future agenda, or respond to criticism made by speakers. However, the mayor and council may not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during call to the audience. So we will go down the list. We will start tonight with Logan Havens, if Logan is on the line.
I do not see Logan, Your Honor.
Okay. Fran Garcia.
No, Your Honor.
Bonnie Poulos.
No, Your Honor.
Lois Pollock.
I don't see her, Your Honor.
Ellen Wheeler.
I'm here. Yes, I'm here.
All right, Ellen, perfect. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Vice Mayor Lee and council members. This is Ellen Wheeler. I'm here to speak in support of reconsideration of the ADU ordinance. Sorry, there's a lag where I can hear myself after I talk. So
If you
Yeah,
mute,
if you're not
mute your,
speaking, yep.
yeah,
If you're
I'm
not
going
speaking,
to
please
mute it.
mute.
Thanks. Okay. Sorry for that. I am a resident of the Miramonte neighborhood and previously for 34 years was a resident of the West University neighborhood. And I am here to ask that you vote for reconsideration of the ADU ordinance in order to reduce the limitation on size of such units to 650 square feet on lots less than 8,500 square feet and limitation of 850 square feet on lots larger than 8,500 square feet. I realize that the purpose of this ordinance is to encourage development of affordable housing, and I know that that is a very laudable and important purpose that's badly needed in the community. But I think, particularly in the University of Arizona area, that this ADU ordinance is going to be used as a tool by investors, primarily, who are already buying up houses as they come on the market, really before the neighbors even know that they're on the market, and renting them to as many students as they can possibly put in those houses. I think that those are the people in the U of A area who are likely to take advantage of this ordinance in order to build additional units in small lots and cram as many students as they can into those units. And, you know, the fallout from that is the increased density of residents in the area, as well as increased noise, increased traffic, and parking problems. And these neighborhoods already are really burdened by those issues. I also see this as a possible end run around the group dwelling limitations that the council has imposed
30 seconds.
in certain residential areas, because on a lot, you would be able to have two groups that could both be under the size limit of the group dwelling. So these proposed size limits will keep ADUs in proportion to the lot size, the main house size, and reduce the impact on quality of life for neighboring residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Harris?
No, Your Honor.
Miranda Schubert?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Miranda. You have 3 minutes.
Hey. Okay, thanks. Honorable Vice Mayor and Council, your local YIMBY, Yes in My Backyard chapter, Tucson for Everyone, asks that you stand by your vote in approval of the ADU ordinance. And we've been circulating a petition that currently has over 150 signatures. The signatures are continuing to come in, and the link to the petition was emailed to each of you yesterday. The purpose of Tucson for Everyone is to advocate for more inclusive housing policies and to engage more people in discussions about housing who may not have the privilege of belonging to a neighborhood association. Neighborhood associations are often treated as if they represent the perspective of their entire neighborhood. However, the reality is far more complex. Many people have had experiences interacting with their neighborhood association that have made them feel as though their opinions are unwelcome. As a result, there are important perspectives that are being left out of conversations. This leads to treating complaints about the character of neighborhoods with the same level of seriousness as humanitarian concerns about homelessness. when really the two things are not comparable at all. Housing is a
Miranda, we lost you. Just hang tight.
She's muted, Your Honor. She needs to hit *6.
*6, okay.
There we go.
Miranda,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So housing is a human right, but the character of our neighborhoods is subjective. It is unreasonable to expect that some neighborhoods should stay unchanged in the face of an eviction crisis, severe housing supply shortage, and climate emergency. We must stop catering to the loudest voices, the ones who feel entitled to the attention of city staffers and council members, but who do not represent the majority of Tucsonans. Do you really want to throw away all of the hard work that went into crafting this ordinance and to invite further distrust from a community that already feels uneasy about your commitment to changing the status quo in the name of equity and housing justice? Planning and Development Services has thoroughly and directly addressed each and every concern that has been raised about this code amendment and backed it up with data and research. This ordinance was developed alongside a diverse group of approximately 40 individuals in the stakeholder group. The process also included 2 online surveys that received over 600 responses. This ordinance passed unanimously through our Commission on Equitable Housing and Development and through our Planning Commission. Reconsidering your vote means that you don't trust the input and expertise of the people who have been at the center of these negotiations for the past year. The current amendment, which was already voted into approval, includes compromises that were made on both sides. In the last meeting, it was noted that 9,000 to 12,000 additional units of housing are needed to address the crisis we are in. Where are these units supposed to go? Are we supposed to keep nurturing suburban sprawl, spreading our resources even thinner? Innovation is demanded in this moment. We have so many people in our communities in need of more flexible and diverse housing options. Allowing ADUs to have enough latitude to make them accessible to regular folks and not just wealthy investors is one small incremental step toward increasing our housing supply. Don't let a select group of people second guess your decision and think that they can bully their way into the results that they want. As public servants, please protect your least empowered residents from the entitlement of the elite. Human right, but the character of our neighborhoods is.
Thank you, Miranda. Corey Schultz.
Can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Corey. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Hi, my name is Corey Schultz. I'm a resident of the Samos neighborhood in Ward 3. I am also a licensed realtor. I'm not calling on behalf of any of those organizations, but myself. And I strongly urge the City Council to stand by the year-long public participation process on the ADU code amendment. And I think that this is one of the best public participation processes we've ever seen in the city. A lot of folks from different segments of our community, including myself, have stayed hyper involved in this process the whole time, and now are really wondering if our voices were heard. I don't feel that it's fair to pull the rug out from underneath folks who have been engaging in this democratic process. The amendment should be supported as is. By adding additional restrictions on size, height, setbacks, it only creates more hoops for people to jump through when we're trying to build up middle-class families and build housing that works for a variety of people, specifically multi-generational housing, which is really lacking in the Tucson area, especially around the Tucson city core. I believe that private property owners should be able to make the highest and best use of their properties. And I think the simplest way to do that is by providing very open and really what was already approved by the city council set of guidelines that will allow companies to design casitas that could be financed by homeowners to be built on lots that really maximize the best use of their property. If we are serious about addressing housing and our environmental crisis, we need to increase housing stock in ways to maximize our existing urban footprint. This is one small step, and Tucson deserves a chance to try it out and to assess it as indicated in the original amendment. This proposal will only work for middle-class families if it's flexible enough for families to build the type and size of house that will benefit their lifestyles. If it needs to be simple enough for people and financial institutions to get on board, let's keep it simple enough so that they will get on board. As somebody that works in the professional housing model or industry, I find it very hard to believe that investors are going to come in and try and build $100,000 and $150,000 guest houses that are renting for $1,000 a month. It's going to take a long time for that return on investment to pay off. And when they do end up selling the house, which all landlords eventually do, it's just going to float right back into our housing market with that added build. That's all I have. Thank you for your time, Mayor and Council. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Corey. Melody Peters.
Don't see her, Your Honor.
Diana Lett.
No, Your Honor.
Lisa Jones.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Lisa. Yes, go ahead. You've got 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Lisa, we can hear you.
Oh, super, thank you. I didn't know if I could do it right. Okay, thank you. Honorable Vice Mayor Lee and council members and City Manager Ortega, and hopefully Mayor Romero later on when she can view this, or maybe even right now from afar. Anyway, my name is J. Lisa Jones. I'm longtime resident of Tucson. My home is at 933 East Seneca Street and in Jefferson Park neighborhood, which is a National Register Historic District plus an NPZ. I don't represent an organization. I'm not a paid speaker. I'm just really concerned about what's happening here. And I do realize that several people have been working for a long time to put something together that would work. And I realize that it has tremendously ideal motivation to make things better and housing better. However, what I'm really concerned about is that as it is right now, it would have unintended consequences. So I'm urging the mayor and council to vote in favor of reconsideration of the ADU text amendments. I think it's important to, I think it doesn't hurt to rethink this issue in depth, maybe some new ahas and different perspective. I'm personally concerned that that smaller, I live in an old smaller lot property, and I'm concerned that there will be larger, well, I was going to say houses, I don't know if that's the right word, built, which would be disproportionate to old historic homes. And somebody before me inferred that that's some kind of, oh, never mind. I think it's really important to keep Tucson's historic districts being historic districts. I'm also concerned about rental property and affordability for families. I'm concerned about cover with planting trees and investors building more buildings on properties, concrete. We don't want to be Phoenix. I don't want us to be Phoenix. Anyway, I urge you, please, please think about this in depth. I really am concerned about unintended consequences. Things can have a very idealistic motivation and come out with some really bad results. We don't want that to happen here. Please think it through. And please, please, I urge you to vote in favor of reconsideration of the ADU text amendments. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go back up to Bonnie Poulos. I believe she might be on.
We're still trying to get Bonnie on, Your Honor.
Okay, we will come back. Natsem Lima.
Yes, Your Honor.
Natsem, are you there? And I hope I'm saying your name right.
I'm here.
Okay, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, 1 second. I just dialed in. Just okay, so yes, my name is Natsum, and I'm a resident of the city of Tucson. I'm also a graduate student here at the Wine College of Optical Sciences at the University of Arizona. And I love Tucson with all my heart, and I've only been here 2 years. The food, the landscape, and the wonderful people in the community are a few of the main reasons. Today I'm speaking in support of the ADUs in Tucson as it was passed, as the zoning laws were passed for it. And I just want to share the firsthand experiences I have living in an ADU. So it was in Seattle for about 2 years. And through that time, we formed a really strong friendship with our landlord. We integrated with our neighbors, and we engaged in simple acts of kindness like sharing foods or acts of service like caring for each other's pets and helping each other out with our yards. To me, it's a bit sad to hear opposition views of ADUs that are not based on experience. For example, the concern that there will be loud parties in the neighborhood, or that newfound strangers in the neighborhood may be dangerous. And I understand that those views are coming from a place of concern. But I think for the most part, they're grossly overly generalized, and they ignore many of the social code misconduct that are already implicitly enforced. And usually basic background checks can help filter those concerns. I want to change tack a little bit further. I think there are other benefits to ADUs that make them a moral imperative. For example, they aid in fight against climate change. Dense living arrangement means less plumbing, less copper. It means more ride sharing. It means less large capital infrastructure needed to accommodate the increasing population of Tucson. It means more opportunities for installation of alternative energies. There's many ways that this can play a role in reducing our carbon footprint. I think that if anybody has, like myself, an ounce of guilt in their individual contribution to climate change, I think supporting ADUs is a pretty great way at redemption. So that's all I have to say, and I hope that you'll take these comments into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Abriza Zigir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You have 3 minutes, Abriza.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You have
Good evening. Good evening, Honorable Vice Mayor and City Council. I am not here to speak about the ADUs at this point. I did attend the Board of Adjustment meeting on October 27th, and concerning Silver Bell and TEP, as far as widening of Silver Bell and the proposed overhead electric lines to go along the Silver Bell front. But what happened, there wasn't a forum, only 3 people attended, and currently I guess there's supposed to be 7 board members. There hasn't been 7 board members since January of 2020. Currently, there's only 5. So since there was only 3, so there was no quorum, so the meeting was canceled. There was many people waiting to speak concerning this issue along Silver Bell. And so I understand that these members are appointed as one is from the mayor and then each of the 6 wards. My question is how come there's still 2 vacancies? I'm not sure if it's the mayor or one of the or both, some of the wards for a year and 10 months. It would be nice to see full boards. You get a better cross section of the city. I'm assuming that's why there's one from each ward. So my question is to the mayor and city council is why? I don't know, maybe the city manager can answer this. It was, do we, you know, and there should be something, since this is a critical board of adjustments, is a critical board for to happen as far as looking at variances. So I would appreciate, can anyone answer that or address that?
So Abriza, I'm sorry, Mr. Manager.
Vice Mayor, what I can do is send a note out to the caller and explain where we are with the Board of Adjustment. It would not be appropriate for us to discuss that under call to the audience. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
I do have a question, though, germane to that, and that is maybe for Mr. Rankin. When an item such as that is continued or they don't meet quorum, what happens to that item? Because that's a very significant item. Not that most of them aren't, but they go to the Board of Adjustment. But what's going to happen with that one in particular and generally?
It's been rescheduled to November 17th.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Mike, you owe her. You're welcome. You owe her 2 minutes of your paycheck.
All right. Well, thank you for your attention this evening, and keep plugging on.
Thank you, Abriza. All right, last call, Roger, to see if we have Bonnie, and then we'll move on to the next item.
No, Your Honor, she dropped off again.
Okay. All right. Well, that concludes the list of speakers for call to the audience. Item 7.
Consent agenda items A through L.
Reports from the city manager on the consent agenda are received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, you're requested to read the consent agenda.
Your Honor, on this evening's consent agenda, item A is a mayor and council meeting schedule for 2022. Item B is water, naming Tucson Water's Sharp Facility, the Shirley C. Scott Southeast Houghton Area Recharge Project. Item C is an intergovernmental agreement with Pima Community College District to allow the city to provide choice neighborhoods planning and action grant funding for restoration of historic sign. Item D is an intergovernmental agreement with Pima County for the reimbursement of the 911 Master Street Address Guide. Item E is Tucson Code amending Chapter 10 Fiscal Year 2022 Compensation Plan Schedules. Item F is an intergovernmental agreement amendment with Pima County for reimbursement of humanitarian aid expenditures through the Federal Emergency Management Agency Emergency Food and Shelter Program. Item G is a grant agreement with the Arizona State Historic Preservation Office for a federal pass-through participation agreement. Item H is a final plat S21031 Campbell Landing, lots 1 through 4. Item I is an intergovernmental agreement with specialized law enforcement teams among public agencies within Pima County for joint formation and operation. Item J is an intergovernmental agreement with the Arizona Board of Regents for and on behalf of Arizona State University for the sharing and use of Arizona Intimate Partner Risk Assessment Initiatives. Item K is an intergovernmental agreement with Pima County for the 2021 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program Award. Item L is a change effective date for the development review fee restructuring to support new permitting system. This item has been continued at the request of staff. That's the extent of the consent agenda, Your Honor. Appropriate motion would be to forward items A through K, with the exception of item B, which will be considered separately at the request of Councilmember Fimbres.
Your Honor, I'd like to second.
All right, perfect. We have a motion and a second. Let's go to roll call, Mr. Clerk.
McZulik,
Aye.
Mr. Fimbres,
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham,
Aye.
Ms. Santa Cruz,
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lee.
Aye. The items on the consent agenda are approved by a vote of 6-0 minus item B, which will be separate. So Roger, then we have item B.
Item B is water naming Tucson Water Sharp Facility, the Shirley C. Scott Southeast Houghton Area Recharge Project. This was pulled by Councilmember Fimbres.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. During her 6 terms and 24 years of the Tucson City Council, Shirley Scott faithfully served her Ward 4 constituents and represented the city's interests on the regional and national stage. Councilmember Scott championed private and public investments throughout Ward 4. Her many policy and initiative successes on behalf of her constituents included expansion of the Williams Clements Recreational Center, balanced and planned growth in Houghton Road area, construction of Mary Ann Cleveland Way, increased safety for Vale School District students, and increased neighborhood protection and public safety awareness. She also worked with Pima College to get the East Campus going out there. Residents across the city were all well served by Shirley Scott's leadership in securing sustainable water supplies for the Tucson region. Her role as host of the annual Back to School Bash, her support for Davis Mountain Air Force Base, her efforts to spearhead the city of Tucson's first solar power building, and her representation of Mayor and Council on the Tucson Airport Authority Board of Directors and members of the Board of Directors of the National League of Cities. Shirley Scott was a further advocate for the city's interests. Tucson Water Sharp Facility, which began operation in November 2020, is located on 40 acres of city-owned property in Ward 4. The commemorative naming of Tucson Water Sharp Facility is an appropriate recognition of Shirley Scott's distinguished service for the city of Tucson and her lasting dedication to her ward and our city. I proudly move the Mayor and Council adoption of Resolution 23411, naming the Tucson Water Sharp Facility as Shirley C. Scott Southeast Houghton Area Recharge Project.
Your Honor, I'd like to second that. I have some commentary.
Absolutely. Councilmember Cunningham.
So when I first started on the council, I didn't want to listen to Shirley. I thought I knew way more than her. And as I enter my 10th year in this body, she was right about a lot of things. She just knew so much more than everybody that I can't even explain how many things she was right. She was politically, but also instinctively someone who truly understood consensus building, meeting of the minds, compromise, and getting things done for her ward. All those things are her legacy, and Nikki, it's early, but you've done a terrific job in keeping Shirley's vision and legacy going. So congratulations to Shirley, well deserved.
Councilmember Ulick, you look like you want to speak. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Yeah, I don't know if Shirley is with us today. Has she been able to join us for this? No.
No, I don't believe she's on. We're hoping she can come to the actual ceremony.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bet all of us would like to be there to honor Councilmember Scott. And you know, I sat next to her for 12 of the 24 years of her service, and also met her first as we both served on the city's budget advisory committee. So I just, you know, had an opportunity over, gosh, you know, close to 30 years to see Shirley really embody public service. She cared so deeply, and my favorite moments with Shirley were probably her back to school bash events at her office, where it was just clear that she cared so deeply about everybody that she represented in the ward, and also took her responsibility to the entire city very seriously. And I also want to thank her for the kindness that she always showed to me and my family during our shared years of service. So what a great opportunity. I'm so glad to be at the table to be able to support this honor for Councilmember Scott. Thank you.
Well, I will also add, it's definitely a big chair to fill. I'm sitting in the same exact chair that was in the office before. And so it's been tough to come in following someone who's had 24 years of service and such great connections into the community. So I'm really excited that we're able to make this dedication and put her name on a project that she was so passionate about. So I'm very excited as well. Any other, and Councilmember Finbar's laid it all out, so it's really hard to follow that. Any other discussion or commentary before we vote? All right, roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Fimbres,
Aye.
McSulik,
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham,
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek,
Aye.
Nick Santa Cruz,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lee.
Aye. Item B on the consent agenda is approved by a vote of 6-0. We are going to move up item 9 because we have a guest for this item that we don't want to wait through the public hearing. So item 9, Mr. Clerk.
Housing and Community Development Affordable Housing Impact Fee Subsidy Program.
City Manager's Communication number 345 dated November 9th is received into and made part of the record. What is the council's pleasure?
Madam Vice Mayor, I'd like to first say this. Our impact fee policy says that to incentivize affordable housing, that we will waive the impact fees based on the amount of non-public funds used to finance a project. And in this case, Desiree Cook, from IMU 360, they've used 0 public funds to build these 10 affordable housing units. The total impact fees would be $8,992.14, and I would move to waive 100% of those fees, and thank Desiree, our star of the Ellen Show, local star of the Ellen Show, for the great work that she's doing down there with IMU 360. And Nikki, you say she's with us tonight? She's say a few words, Desiree, if you're on the call.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to second Councilman Kozaczek's motion.
I actually don't know, Steve, if she is here. I might have misread your text message that she was, and we.
All right. Well, good enough. I didn't want to have them sit through the public hearing, but they did great work down there, and I see Karen's got her hand up now.
Yes, Councilmember Ulick.
Thank you. Yeah, I also want to thank Desiree. There's a wonderful project in Ward 3 that has uplifted the lives of youth, and also, quite frankly, uplifted that area of our ward. And so couldn't be better placed in terms of investment, partnership, and really having an impact on the lives of young people who've had a rough road, and who aging out of foster care, and who are starting their young adult lives. Thank goodness for Desiree, for her vision, for everybody involved in the effort, and it's great to be able to support this. Thank you.
All right. We have a motion and second. I will just say, as Councilmember Kosachik knows, I've known Desiree for many years. We've done a lot of things together, and it's been amazing to watch her work in the community grow. And she was just recently on Ellen, which I need to get her autograph next time I see her. So congratulations to Desiree for all the work. Mr. Clerk, do we need a voice vote or roll call?
Couldn't hear you.
I couldn't hear you over Steve's chair squeaking.
Sorry.
Voice vote is fine, Your Honor.
Okay, awesome. So we have a motion and a second. No additional discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Perfect. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Steve. Item 8.
Your Honor, before we go on to item 8, if we could go back to the liquor agenda. I inadvertently recommended that you adopt all of the items that were on the liquor agenda. There was one item that TPD had indicated that the applicant was not in compliance with city requirements, and they've asked for that item to be reconsidered. If the council would so like to do that.
Your Honor, I move for reconsideration.
Second, and that's in Ward 6. And I was going to ask you about that, Roger, before you said everybody was in compliance. That's THA 9 and 19E. TPD said they were not in compliance. So is that they are still not in compliance?
They're not still in compliance.
That's correct. So I haven't heard a word from them about this. And so if TPD is saying they're not in compliance, I guess, I would move that we make a recommendation for denial to the State Liquor Board.
So let's vote on the motion to reconsider first, and so that it opens it back up, and then you can do your motion separately for the new action.
Okay. Roger, this was a voice vote. So can we do voice for reconsideration? Okay, so we have a motion and second for reconsideration of item 5. Any discussion?
5B1.
5B1, thank you. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes for reconsideration of that item.
Okay.
Someone else?
Sorry for getting it out of order there. So it was THA N19E is the name of the establishment, and TPD said they were not in compliance in our material. Have had no contact from them, so I move that we make a recommendation of denial, get them back into compliance.
And if we have TPD on the line, Roger, are they available?
Yes, we do.
To put on the record for the reason for their recommendation.
Fair enough.
That they're finding that they're not in compliance, so we have it in the record.
Okay, fair enough.
Perfect. So who do we have from TPD who can speak to that?
Lieutenant Wilson?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, good evening. This is Detective Steve Wilson, Tucson Police Department. Can everybody hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. I'm here to represent the Tucson Police Department on this application.
Perfect. I believe the question is just to kind of explain the reasoning for this not being recommended.
Sure. I believe it's pronounced the 9, but I could be incorrect. But however, the reason for our recommendation of denial was based on 2 of the 5 applicants on the application indicated an affirmative on question 14 reference. Have you been cited, arrested, indicted, convicted, or summoned in a court for any violation of any criminal law or ordinance? They had indicated they had indeed been arrested, and further in their explanation of that, they had indicated that they had been arrested and subsequently accepted a plea bargain for the violation, which was in turn a felony conviction. We, as investigators, contacted the La Paz County probation department for which where they were convicted. The probation department indicated that the two applicants, Cameron Webster and Mr. Kalen Murray, had been convicted of felony crimes of drug-related marijuana possession for transportation, and that their plea bargain stated that they would serve probation, and upon completion of that probation, the violation would remain designated as a felony conviction and not move to a misdemeanor. So under state law, Title 4, give me a second to look it up here. Title 4, 202 outlines that no licensee or license shall be issued or renewed for any person who within 5 years before application has been convicted of a felony or convicted of an offense in another state that would be a felony in the state. And these violations were, they occurred in 2018 and 2019.
So this is a function of state. This is a function of state law, then.
Correct, and because they are in violation of Title 4 for the felony convictions, that we are recommending denial based on the fact that they are in violation of state law.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Kozaczek, you made a motion, I believe,
to recommend denial based on the violation of state law.
And did we get a second on that?
I think Mr. Cunningham did, and I'll second it.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Yes. I'm not sure on a core value situation. I'm in agreement with the reasons why we're denying it. So basically what we're doing is we're denying a liquor license because some guy got convicted of marijuana 20 years ago or 10 years ago and now isn't allowed to get a liquor license for a spot?
No, the violations were 2 and 3 years ago, and the denial was based on a condition of state law that calls for denial under those conditions.
All right, I just want to make, I mean, I understand, but there's also, I would say that if there's folks in the city who can, depending on what ward he is and what their business is and what the circumstances are, if they really need the liquor license for their business to thrive. And I'm not sure, I don't know the circumstances. Hopefully we can help them understand how all that works. That's all.
Yeah, that's totally fair. You know, I would just say that, you know, Lane has run expungement clinics. I've run expungement clinics. I think I know Ward 3 has sponsored a resource fair that had expungement as a part of it. You know, we're all in. If this guy got busted for an ounce back in 2010, that's a different conversation. But that's not tonight's conversation.
Agreed. No, I'm in support. I just want to kind of point out that we support people trying to get their business off the ground. So if there's an avenue to do that, let's do it. But for now, I totally support the motion.
Right. Any other discussion? All right, if not, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Are we good to go then, Mr. Clerk, with the liquor license?
We are, Your Honor. Thank you for allowing us to do that.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Rankin. All right, item 8.
Public hearing zoning C92012, 6th Campbell Planned Area Development, C1, R2, and P to pad City Manager's Report Ordinance Adoption, Ordinance number 11884.
City Manager's Communication number 346, dated November 9th, is received into and made part of the record. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the time and place legally advertised for a public hearing on a request to rezone approximately 2.3 acres from C1 to R2 and P to pad zoning. The rezoning site is located at the southwest corner of 6th Street and Campbell Avenue and will be a mixed-use development. The zoning examiner and staff recommend approval, pad zoning, and adoption of ordinance subject to conditions. Is the applicant or representative present?
Say that again. Yes, we are present. I am present.
Okay. Are you agreeable to the proposed requirements?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a protocol question? Is it, are we able to discuss the possibility of raising a height on one of the parcels?
So right now, this is a public hearing, so we have a list of people who are going to be providing their voice on this subject right now.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you.
This hearing is scheduled to last no more than 1 hour. Speakers are limited to 5-minute presentations. All right, so please come forward. Well, you won't come forward because we're virtual. When I call your name and make your presentation, you'll state your name, whether or not you live in the city, whom you are representing, and whether or not you are a paid speaker. So we will start with Colby Henley.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Colby. You have 5 minutes.
Can you hear me? This is Colby.
Yes, Colby. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Colby Henley. I live at 1140 East 10th Street. I'm not a paid representative. I want to speak to voice my opposition to the proposed rezoning as it currently stands. And initially, I just want to speak to the affordable housing issue around this project. In our neighborhood dealings with Mr. Cummings, we initially asked him to consider reserving a percentage or portion of the residential units for affordable workforce housing. He was not amenable to that. We also understood that and wanted to be flexible and try some alternative approaches. We talked about some other parcels within the neighborhood that could be donated to the land trust or otherwise developed as affordable housing outside of his specific project. We also met with the University of Arizona on 2 occasions to see if there are a way to work out a parcel deal as part of their sale of the parcel within this pad to, again, have Mr. Cummings purchase some extra lots with U of A loans and then donate those to the land trust. It was very clear in dealing with Mr. Cummings that he had no intent and no interest at all in affordable housing. And I certainly don't have to remind you all that this is a critical issue in our city right now. And I also recognize that the council can't deny a rezoning strictly on affordable housing issues. However, I think just the broader rezoning process is important to think about. There's, Mr. Cummings bought these parcels a number of years ago. The one that he intends to develop most intensely are currently zoned residential. So any rezoning request, particularly when you're going from a residential to multi-story buildings, that's a massive increase in value for the applicant. And part of that process is kind of a trade-off with the community. I feel like that we're going to write Mr. Cummings a big check to an increase in value, then he should show how his project benefits the overall community and the broader goals that the city has, one of which is affordable housing. So as it's currently structured, the vast majority of the benefit of this project goes to Mr. Cummings. And I think we need to see a more balanced project that would provide more of a community benefit such as affordable housing. So I'm asking that in its current state, it be denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Colby. Tim Kinney.
Yes, just needs to hit *6.
Tim, if you can hear us, hit *6. Yep, we can hear you. You have 5 minutes, Tim.
All right, how's that? Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. Good evening, Madam Vice Mayor, council members, and city staff. My name is Tim Kinney. I'm an attorney representing the Rincon Heights Neighborhood Association. I live and work in the city, and I am being paid. I'll keep my comments as brief as I can, as you have already heard, and we'll hear some more from neighborhood leaders and neighbors about their specific concerns and frustrations with this application and this process. I'll try to summarize and provide some context for the application to shed more light on how we got where we are tonight. The applicant held its one required neighborhood meeting in October 2020. And in response, the neighborhood provided a letter to the applicant, as is normal for a neighborhood to do. The letter listed the neighborhood's initial concerns, requested initial changes, and expressed a desire to meet and work through their concerns with the applicant. The neighborhood has been very clear about its primary concerns since the beginning. Those concerns include building heights, student housing, affordable housing, traffic, items related to mitigating potential problem uses, and entering into an agreement separate from the PAD for items that might not be appropriate for the PAD. The neighborhood expected, as with any rezoning application, and particularly one of this size adjacent to the neighborhood and the university, that the applicant would take their concerns seriously and begin building a relationship with them and start a process that would eventually lead the neighborhood to support the application. Or if agreement couldn't be reached, at least the applicant could say it did all it could. But instead, the neighborhood's letter and their concerns were totally ignored, and the neighborhood heard nothing but silence from the applicant until the zoning examiner hearing was scheduled. It became clear at this time that the applicant was unfamiliar with certain fundamental requirements of a rezoning. It's not enough to simply meet code requirements. Community and neighborhood support is crucial, particularly when requesting such a drastic change from a property's existing zoning, as is the case here. The application went on to be heard at 4 separate zoning examiner hearings, and the neighborhood participated in 4 or 5 additional separate meetings with the applicant, all of which were held at the direction of either the zoning examiner or Councilmember Kozaczek, not at the applicant's request. I'm happy to go into detailed summaries of each of these meetings if you'd like, but I'm not sure it's necessary. In response to all of our meetings and hearings, the applicant made certain changes to the PAD, but only after being directed to do so by the zoning examiner or when it became apparent that the application would be denied without changes. Despite the changes that were made, the point is that the applicant's MO has been to continually dismiss the neighborhood's concerns until told by the zoning examiner make changes, at one point even stating that additional meetings with the neighborhood would not be a good use of anyone's time. Eventually, the zoning examiner felt it necessary to recommend approval of the application, but only if certain changes were made to reflect the neighborhood's outstanding and reasonable concerns. Now, before you this evening, the applicant seeks your approval and yet refuses to accept all of the zoning examiner's recommendations to address issues the neighborhood has been clear about for over a year. The zoning examiner's recommendation for approval is conditioned on all the changes being made, not some of them. If all the changes are not made, it is not a recommendation for approval. And it seems the applicant has either forgotten or withdrawn its offer to enter into a private agreement with the neighborhood that it made earlier this year in June. While some good changes were made to this application over the past year, they are not enough, still do not address all the primary concerns the neighborhood has been clear about, and do not overcome the distrustful, frustrating, and disappointing experience the neighborhood has had over the past 13 months. This experience, and particularly the fact that not all of their primary concerns have been addressed, including the zoning examiner's unfulfilled conditions and a separate agreement between the neighborhood and the applicant, give the neighborhood no reason to support the application. We therefore respectfully ask that you deny the application as it is tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tim. Lee Marsh.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Lee, we can hear you. You've got 5 minutes.
Great, great. My name is Lee Marsh. I'm a homeowner in Tucson and the president of the Rincon Heights Neighborhood Association. I have been intimately involved in this rezoning since it was initially proposed. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak this evening. We've actually spoken with all of you individually, and we've sent a letter describing just how absolutely fraught this entire rezoning process has been. There's really no reason for me to rehash the facts. It's really perfectly clear how little the applicant cares about the community's input, what we think, or how his project will impact the area. What I would like to do is set the record straight on a number of points. The applicants referred many times to a line of sight illustration meant to show how the structure would have a minimal impact on properties adjacent on 7th Street. Frankly, a 2D diagram is lacking several important dimensions, only accounts for properties immediately across from the parking garage, and does nothing to illustrate how much this project will impact public resources and impose on the area. I know I have been personally misquoted as giving the neighborhood's blessing on 90 feet, and while that was at one point suggested, it was within the context of expecting to be treated like a partner and seeing the community's needs met, both of which haven't happened and which I'm sure is not the context in which it was described to anyone outside the meeting. Second, the applicant is now scrambling to make changes to set conditions and parameters on a bar at the last minute. It's really kind of ridiculous. These things need to be documented in the PAD document, and this is not how a public process is meant to work. We should have been having this conversation months ago. The changes proposed so far, to my knowledge, are sort of legally meaningless and do nothing to address the underlying concern. The target keeps moving and the narrative we hear keeps changing. First, it was a Flores Market clone, now it's a bar, tomorrow it's what? How are we supposed to form a position on this when the applicant doesn't even seem to know what it'll be? Frankly, I don't believe he intends to build the neighborhood bar at all, because throughout this process, he hasn't given us a single reason to believe anything he tells us. Third, there's been some property owners from 7th Street that have come forward and offered their support for this project. I want to be perfectly clear. Many of these people are remote landlords and property managers who could not care less what happens to the neighborhood. Some others are personal friends of the developer, at least one of whom I know for a matter of fact. Scott hasn't even told the whole truth about what he intends to build. And just because someone's house is a block away does not mean that the rest of the neighborhood will not be impacted. And maybe it even seems rather arbitrary what we're still fighting for, since it's come down so far from where it started, but it's important to know that this was a process of negotiation among neighbors. We have fought tooth and nail for the last year to be heard at all, and what we're fighting for is a position of compromise between very different opinions among neighbors, and our best effort to be positive and open-minded. And the neighborhood said that we would begrudgingly support this project if the zoning examiner's conditions are met and if we got a private agreement, and we'll stay true to our word if that's the council's prerogative. But given how badly this project has been managed so far, I personally don't believe that anything we agree upon in a CBA, a private agreement, will be honored. And even this PAD document itself might as well be thrown in the garbage if the city isn't prepared to carefully monitor the project. Keep in mind, you are dealing with someone who has a storied history of ignoring zoning law and code enforcement at the very properties we are rezoning. Lost my train of thought here. Really, this whole debacle has been a demonstration in pushing the limits of what you can get away with. If we reject the rezoning tonight, we will have to start this process all over. Personally, I would rather renegotiate this with whomever Scott sells his property to, probably someone who will be more professional, try to get some affordable housing out of the project, never deal with the applicant ever again, and not reward this garbage behavior, pathetic excuse for public engagement we've been dealing with for the last year. And just as a final thought, listen, I know as a city, we're aspiring to build up, and with more density, we need that. I get it, but I'm sure we can do better than this. We deserve better than this. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Mark Holman.
In commercial,
Can you try again, Mark?
Okay.
*6.
I said I did hit *6. I feel like that Verizon commercial. Can you hear me now?
We can, Mark. Go ahead. You've got 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good evening, Vice Mayor Lee and members of the council. Thank you for listening. My name is Mark Holman. My wife, Barbara, and I own property at 1619 East 8th Street, where we have lived and raised our family for over 45 years. I oppose the PAD. There are many, many flaws with the proposed project. I will highlight the matter of height. I would draw your attention to the proposed 90-foot building height. The current zoning allows for only 25 feet. The applicant's proposal almost quadruples that height. This would be far and away such a sore thumb thrust into the area, far surpassing anything in sight. It would be a jarring interruption of any view. This sort of blight has consequences, including the erosion of a revitalizing historic part of our community. The applicant has said that he has come down from his original 14-story proposal. Note that this was done in response to the zoning examiner's denial of his original application. It has nothing to do with any discussions with community members. It is not the height he has come down from the sky that matters. It is the height he wants to come up from the ground that does. Our neighbors had a vigorous conversation about acceptable height. We finally agreed to support a 75-foot limit. This was not an easy decision. Though many, like myself, believe this was too high, we thought this height might offer greater housing options, increased density to curtail urban sprawl, and provide space for local businesses. The applicant rejected this out of hand, claiming he would not be able to make any money. I do not believe that it is the neighborhood's nor the mayor and council's responsibility to help a developer enrich himself, particularly at the expense of the quality of life of individuals and families who make this place our home. The proposed height is such an egregious departure from existing zoning that its approval would render zoning itself meaningless. Zoning is intended to protect the community and guide development for the sake of the surrounding area and the community at large. If a developer can do anything, anywhere the developer wants, why have zoning at all? They should not be given a free pass, which would set a remarkably harmful precedent for the development throughout our community. This smacks of pure speculation. In fact, during the presentation he made to our neighborhood, he said that he does not have the money to do this, saying he is, quote, small potatoes, unquote. The applicant's PAD has all the markings of preparing for sale, the biggest package you can get. Before I close, I do need to address the matter of disrespect the applicant has consistently displayed. The applicant has been disingenuous and misleading at best. He has not even done the bare minimum, far, far different than any other related development with which I have been involved. The Volvo PAD, the MARC, Broadway Overlay District, University Parking Garage on Warren, to name a few. He may talk a good game, but in practice, he has refused to work in good faith to address concerns and create mutual benefit. He has dismissed the zoning examiner's recommendation and shown a consistent unwillingness to regard anyone's interests other than his own. Both the adjacent neighborhoods, as well as others, such as the University of Arizona, would welcome good development at this site. While they offer general support, Robert Smith, Vice President of University Planning, Design, and Operations, had this to say in a letter sent to Mayor and Council this spring. Our support is conditional upon the developer working closely with the university and the neighborhoods through the project planning process to respond appropriately to their needs and concerns. High-quality development remains important to the university, as does neighbor and stakeholder engagement process. We would hope that one would not go forward without the other. That was a quote. This condition has not been met. Even the zoning examiner has weighed in on this. In the conclusion of his report, he observes, as noted in the zoning examiner's preliminary report, the University Area Plan, UAP, expressly encourages builders and developers to, quote, consult in the early stages of project planning with representatives of neighborhood associations, unquote. He says, quote, the clear purpose of this policy is to afford nearby residents who will be affected by new development to understand the development that is being proposed and how it might affect them, and to give the developer concerns of neighboring residents. The applicant did not follow the path encouraged by the UAP and did not consult with the affected neighborhoods, unquote. He notes that it was the zoning examiner hearings that created the opportunity for concerns to be expressed. We're used to putting in a lot of time to protect our neighborhood and create something remarkably good. This case is unusual. Dealing with the applicant's gamesmanship and resistance to honest engagement has sucked so much time and energy from our families and taken away from a number of other positive neighborhood projects we had planned. This should not be rewarded. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mark. Jared Reedhead.
Do not see him, Your Honor.
Okay. Lisa Thompson.
I'm here.
Hey, Lisa, we can hear you. You have 5 minutes.
I'm here.
We can hear you. You have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, council members and Vice Mayor, for allowing me to speak. My name is Lisa Thompson, and I have lived on 7th and Warren in a duplex since 1997. I rent the front part of my property, and I have done so since 1997. I am not a remote landlord, and neither is my neighbor, who is also supporting this project but could not be here today with me. Both of us he's lived here since 1974 in this neighborhood, and he owns the 2 properties next to mine. We are 1 block from this unit or from this project, and we both support it. Right now, we live across the street from the parking garage. Part of the parking garage is 85 feet high. I don't think that anything that would be taller than, it's 65, and then there's an elevator shaft that's 85. This doesn't affect us at all. It doesn't block sunlight. Both, this project that we're talking about today is not going to change anybody's view of anything, and it's certainly not going to make a difference as far as, the light that we receive in the house. I also think that it will be a great selling point for when I am renting my property, that we will have a local restaurant, we'll have a market. It's one of the things that we're lacking at this time. Hold on 1 second. I love this neighborhood because of the energy, and that's as it is now. And I think that this would create more energy and also, allow those of us who do live here to have other amenities that other neighborhoods have. As I said, I do think that it would increase my ability to rent my property and make it more attractive. And I most certainly would enjoy being able to walk to, a local restaurant or to walk to get my groceries, which is not possible now. I didn't mention earlier that I am not a paid speaker. I represent no group. I'm just me. I do want to point out that most of the detractors do not live as close to this project as I do. We had concerns with the parking garage and having issues with traffic, and ultimately that didn't happen. I've looked over this project, I've spoken with Mr. Cummings, and I fully support it. I do want to point out that given that I've lived here over 20 years, until this came to the forefront and we started talking about rezoning, and I started looking into it, I never even knew that we had an association in Rincon Heights, and I've been here for over 20 years. So I've never been contacted. This association does not speak for me. I would have no idea how to even contact it. So I just wanted to point that out, that I believe that a lot of, that the folks that are going to be most effective are not the ones that are opposing this project. So I urge you to vote yes. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Lisa. Jerry Sethi.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Jerry. We can hear you and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Jerry Sethi, and I own the property on 1810, 1812 East 7th Street, so which is a street just a little ways. And I understand the zoning changed a little bit, and I'm not one of those NIMBY guys, NIMBY, NIMBYs, not in my backyard. Yeah, the population pressure and urban pressure, the zoning, I mean, something's got to change. We got to house more people. And He's got a very good plan. No plan is perfect. I lose a little bit of the Catalinas if the plan goes through, but I mean, you know, we all have to pitch in a little bit. Otherwise, his plan is quite good. And I can hardly wait when I can go get my chips at Trader Joe's that he thinks he wants to get in there. So it's a very well thought out plan, I think. Is there any questions for me?
Nope, Jerry, if there's anything else you want to say?
Sure. I hope he finds the financing to go through with it, and I think it's a good plan. So please approve it.
Okay, thank you for calling in, Jerry.
Thank you, and everybody, please be safe, and God bless you all.
Thank you, you as well. Dave Chiappetta?
No, Your Honor.
I
Yes, I'm
see
here.
Cindy Hogan. Oh, Dave, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you have 5 minutes.
How you doing? Mayor and Council, my name is David Chiappetta. I live at 1809 East 7th Street. I've lived there and owned the house for 25 years and is directly bordering this project. And I just want to say that I am very, very much in favor of it, and I hope you pass this plan. I've been waiting for something to happen like this on that property for many years. I look forward to having bars, restaurants, a market, whatever is going to be there. I think it's going to be great for the community and our neighborhood. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. And Cindy Hogan, I can see you're there.
Hi there. Yeah, Cindy Hogan with CDG Architects. I drafted the PAD document and I'm here. I just logged in to be sure in case I had questions. I wanted to send my information to the clerk's office. So I'll yield my time to Mr. Cummings. Thanks.
Yes. I'm sorry, Scott Cummings, I am the applicant. I would like to obviously say a few words.
Wait, for those, all the speakers?
So we need to follow the procedures here. And there will be an opportunity for Councilman Logic to take the wheel here in just a moment. We've got to get through the public hearing piece. So we have Dave Armet next.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
That's you, Dave?
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much for taking my call. My name is David Armet, and I'm a long-term Tucsonan. I live in Sam Hughes. I've owned since 2004. Went to Sam Hughes Elementary School back in the 80s. I got the opportunity to move away from Tucson for about 10 years, where I lived in London, England. And I got to see that density is nothing to be scared of. And I'd like to echo, some of Miranda's speaking that she talked about earlier when she spoke about ADUs and about yes in my backyard. If you want to be, actually solve the problems of our city, we have to build. And it doesn't matter if you're not building affordable housing, because if you build expensive housing, people are going to move into that, and they're going to move out of other houses, and those other houses will become affordable. We need to build all kinds of housing. I think it is absurd that 75 feet is okay and 90 feet isn't. It makes no difference at all. These are all tiny, tiny buildings in comparison to a real city. I really enjoy living in Tucson, Arizona since I've moved back in 2018. I really enjoy living in Sam Hughes, just a couple hundred meters from the proposed site. I would really like to have the amenities that would be underneath a building. of that size, I don't think that it is economically viable to create too many constraints, make it too small. It needs to have the height to support the kind of businesses and the kind of density that we need in the community. I would really like to have the kind of amenities that would be under this development, and I'd like to give my support. And that's it.
Thank you, Dave. Evren Sunmez.
Good evening. There's a delay. That's what we're all experiencing. So I believe you're hearing me, but I'm not hearing you back yet. So I'll wait for a second.
Yes, you have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think you can hear me. Good evening. Good evening, Vice Mayor Lee and council members. My name is Evren Sanmez, and I live on 1735 East 8th Street, just a block and a half away from the proposed PAD location, and I'm not a paid speaker. So just to sort of piggyback on some of the things that have already been shared, I would like to start out by saying that I would actually love to see these parcels developed. I really like the idea of adding density, bringing new neighbors to this area, adding affordable housing, as well as market rate housing to our neighbors' housing stocks. All of those things are things that I absolutely support. And I personally don't mind seeing a building that's slightly taller than the parking garage, although I know some of my neighbors feel differently about that. And I'd be delighted to have some new destinations that I could walk to, including a neighborhood bar. But you know, as it is often the case with such things, I guess the devil is in the details, so to speak. So a lot of that depends on the context of the proposal. So this evening, I'm really going to mainly speak to transportation issues because those are the issues that are near and dear to my heart, and also in a way to hopefully not repeat what other neighbors have to share this evening. So when this PAD proposal was first shared with us, we formed a joint subcommittee with the Rincon Heights and the Sam Hughes neighbors to review the document and to offer our feedback. And we brought forward lots of transportation related suggestions to Mr. Cummings. And you know, the goal was to create a more walking, biking, and transit-oriented development on these parcels, and also, frankly, to help us get on board with the proposal, right? So I will acknowledge that he incorporated some of these into his most recent PAD document, but the parking provisions still remain very unsatisfactory to me personally, and I believe that that's a sentiment that's shared among at least many of the Rincon Heights members of that subcommittee. So I'm just going to elaborate on that for a minute. If you can just bear with me, I'm going to throw some numbers around. It's late in the evening maybe for numbers, but hopefully we can stick to it. So, you know, the residential parking requirements included in this PAD are 0.9 spaces per dwelling unit. And our ask was to bring it down to no more than 0.7 spaces per dwelling unit. And just to give you a little bit of a reference, the Sunshine Mile Urban Overlay District parking requirements start at 1 space per dwelling unit, but then there's an immediate 20% reduction offered to developments within 650 feet of a transit stop. And then there's actually further reductions as the development meets additional criteria. And this particular PAD proposal is across the street from a SunTrans stop. It's half a mile from a Sunlink stop. It's literally sandwiched between a current and an upcoming bicycle boulevard. And, you know, not to mention that it's located just merely steps away from the U of A campus. And it's probably safe to assume that majority of the tenants will be U of A students or other folks affiliated with the University of Arizona. So there's a huge walking potential here. I will also add that the engineering firm who conducted the traffic impact assessment for this PAD supported a parking requirement of 0.7 parking spaces per dwelling unit for the partners on fourth PAD. And then the same firm also authored a study that basically documented that students drive a lot less in the U of A area. So I believe that if this firm actually were approached by Mr. Cummings requesting a genuine reconsideration of the parking requirements that align with our asks, I kind of have no doubt that we'd be looking at a different parking provision today. And I think it'd be really fair to say that our parking related requests went largely ignored throughout the conversations around this PAD proposal. I'll just add that, we also offered ideas around other effective transportation demand management tools, such as unbundling the price of parking spaces from the price of rent, which is successfully used in many other cities. And we realized that some of these requests can't be facilitated through a PAD. So we wanted to formalize a community benefits agreement with them where requests of this nature would be included.
30 seconds.
And then, okay, wow, that went by fast. So this community benefits agreement was really a central piece for us to lend our support for this proposal and creatively address issues like transportation, local business support, and affordable housing. And obviously that hasn't happened. So just to wrap up, I know you have different paths in front of you this evening, and aspects of this proposal have improved significantly once Mr. Cummings realized that working with us was the only course of action to satisfy the zoning examiner. And normally I'd be inclined to ask that you approve it with the zoning examiner recommendations with additional conditions such as revised parking provisions and a CBA with the neighborhood. But as other neighbors have already discussed, his track record with us basically gives me no hope that he would indeed fulfill those conditions. So I'll just let you be the judges of that tonight and invite you to consider a denial for this proposal as it currently stands. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Evelyn. And last on our list for speakers is Molly McCassin.
There should be a Jarrett Reedhead on there.
There is, Jared. I'll come right back to you. I called your name and you couldn't connect with you. Is Molly McCassin on? All right.
Hello?
Hi, Molly. You have 5 minutes.
Was I called on? I'm sorry.
Just now. You're right on time.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Vice Mayor, council members. My name's Molly McCassin, and I am a long-term resident in the inner city. Actually grew up in Sam Hughes and later bought a house and have been living in that house since 1982. I am wanting to talk to you tonight as, I guess, just someone who loves the inner city and who also has been involved in rezonings and policy decisions that have kept the quality of life so high in the inner city. Unusual. Many cities, they have spent, bucket loads of money trying to do what we in Tucson have achieved by having really, I think, credible and strong zoning processes that have included neighbors as well as developers. So tonight, I'm speaking to you both as a concerned neighbor to this project, and also as a member of the Rincon Heights and Sam Hughes working group that tried to negotiate with the AD. And I just want to start off by saying I urge you not to support this rezoning. And the reason I feel that way is that the inner city is viable and desirable place to live because for years, as I say, it's been a part of our civic culture to insist that stakeholders, residents, neighborhood businesses, renters are all respected and listened to in the rezoning process. And we have done a darn good job, including this council. And I don't want to see us veer off. I think this could set a very bad precedent because approving this rezoning would break with this governing tradition because this rezoning process, as far as working, neighbors with the developer, has really been disingenuous, and it has failed to stand up to that we have a community. Mr. Cummings has not had a great deal of respect for those of us who have spent hours of our time. We're all volunteers, but we're stakeholders. We're people who love where we live, and we want to see it continue to thrive. I've been amazed. Rincon Heights has been willing to negotiate, has been willing to compromise right from the get-go. But that isn't what Mr. Cummings has wanted to do. So it makes you believe that this is definitely one of those situations where it's a speculative rezoning, and it will be sold off. And what will be lost in that selling off is, I think, something really precious about the quality of life in this part of town. I guess my biggest problems are that Mr. Cummings has been through the process with the zoning examiner and has gotten recommendations, and people have spent time trying to negotiate with those, and he has simply not come through. He has not kept his word to the group that was working with him, and that's really unfair. I also want to remind folks that 75-foot limit that the neighbors were willing to negotiate at is based on the heights of university structures. And those were never involved and approved in any rezonings in this city. The university does those, declares those things on their own. And so what we have here is, I think we have an opportunity to do a redevelopment that could have been remarkable. And I hope perhaps it still can. But in its current formation, it doesn't meet any of the standards that any of us who have invested our money in our homes and our businesses, that what we want for the inner city. I mean, we want more affordable housing. We want buildings that aren't just towering over us. We want control of, safe intersections and safe traffic flow and more bike paths. And Mr.
seconds.
Cummings has walked away from that. Anyway, thank you so much for listening tonight, and appreciate your concern for this project, and I hope you will turn it down. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. And then last, just to circle around, Jarrett Reedhead.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear. You have
Hello?
5.
Thanks. Vice Mayor, Mayor, Council, thank you for time to address you. I think Mr. Cummings has done a fabulous job. He's contacted me several times regarding this, asked me if I had questions, issues regarding it. I own several properties that would be affected by this property at 1722 East 7th Street, 1441 East 8th Street, and I manage about 13 others, or used to manage about 13 others that would be affected by this. And I can tell you that the students, the faculty, everyone would love to have this development here, to be able to go and have a grocery store, and be able to have a bar, be able to have office space, be able to have mixed development like this that close. Absolutely wonderful. I know that many of these previous people that have spoken have talked about, that they want to meet, they want this, and ultimately it comes down to they want Mr. Cummings to spend more and more and more of his money to give them free stuff. And so I think it's really important that he's met with these people, he's given them his time, his energy, and ultimately he's not going to meet all their demands, because most of their demands, I mean, when I've met with many of these same neighbors on some of my developments, they want me to pay for all their stuff. It makes no sense. He's been very reasonable. He's went out and met with the neighbors. You can see that many of the neighbors that are directly affected by this, or property owners such as myself, have no problem with it. It's all these other neighborhood groups that want to get together and fight these battles that, quite frankly, make no sense. It's going to improve the quality of life for everyone there. They're going to have great housing. It's going to get rid of the mini dorms that you guys all hate. It's going to give density to where it should be, close to the university, close to the city center, close to traffic, bus lines, and the light rail. It's going to increase and make it a really nice place. So I know that there's no way everyone's going to be happy with what's ever done, but I think Mr. Cummings has done a fantastic job bringing forth a good development that will meet a lot of the needs and make the neighbors, especially the ones that live there or that have properties there that rent them out to students, are going to be very thrilled about. And that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Jarrett. And thank you for everyone who came to speak on this topic tonight. May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye. Aye.
Your Honor, I think discussion. I think we should have discussion.
What did you just say?
I think we should have discussion on this. Do we want to close the public hearing?
That's what we just voted on.
Well, we have a
All right,
second.
then
All right. Do we have any opposed? I didn't get to the opposed piece.
yeah, I vote no. I vote
You
no.
vote-
We should not close this public hearing. Maybe we can close the public hearing later, but we may have, it may be an option. I'm not saying it will, it is the best option, but it may be an option to leave this public hearing open because that we've heard two different sides, a lot of different neighborhood impact. There's obviously there are 4 different items on here from parking to specifically the CBA and affordable housing that we may be missing an opportunity if we go flat denial, but I'm not really prepared to approve it tonight. But I think we can try to have some of the neighbors and the developer go back for one bite at the apple, and that would require the public hearing to be open. So I don't know if we want to close it. That's all I'm saying. If you guys aren't tracking me, I get it, but I'm not going to vote to close this public hearing. I think it limits our options.
Councilmember Kozaczek?
Yeah, we haven't heard from Scott. We have the closing the public hearing. We're not going to go back and start re-engaging the people who've spoken at the public hearing at this point. We can, let's just see how this thing goes on, how the conversation goes. Now the protocol is that the applicant makes a statement and then we have our discussion, see where it goes.
We had 5 in favor of closing, 1 opposed. So the public hearing is closed. Mr. Clerk, you are requested to read ordinance 11884 by number and title only.
Ordinance number 11884 relating to zoning, amending zoning district boundaries in that area located at the southwest corner of 6th Street and Campbell Avenue in case C92012, 6th at Campbell Planned Area Development, C1, R2, and P to pad 44 and setting an effective date.
What is the council's pleasure?
Well, Madam Mayor, I think, and from Rankin can correct me, the protocol now is to hear from the applicant or his representatives.
I agree that now would be the time to allow the applicant to address some of the issues that were raised during the public hearing.
Okay, fair enough. I just want to say before we do that, that the last time I had an interaction with Mr. Reed, the last speaker was at one of his many dorms in Rincon Heights that had been a 105-year-old house that he demolished, and I met him on site because he built a mini dorm there and a frat house, and we had to meet over there with TPD to get our arms around the disruption that was causing to the immediately adjacent neighbors. So just to put the last speaker's comments in context. But Scott, go ahead.
Thank you, Steve, and the City Council. My name is Scott Cummings. I live in the Midtown area. I live at 30 Country Club behind the Benedictine Sanctuary. I've lived there for over 38 years. Everything I do in my personal and business life goes from Country Club to 4th Avenue. So 4th Avenue, I mean, the Midtown area is very, very special to me and very dear to me. One of the things I'd really like to set straight is that during this process, you know, there were some philosophical differences, and I found with some of the neighbors, and I found that, you know, I need to go out and actually meet and go door to door, because there's a handful of people that I will never agree on certain things, and I didn't want to just shut the door and say, well, put a blank canvas over everything saying this is how everyone feels. So I did start going door to door. And for instance, one of the first people I knocked on was Lisa Thompson, who lives, can we please put the diagram up?
Can I share the screen real quick?
Can we share the screen so I can put a diagram up?
Steve, does that work for you? Okay.
It's on the screen on the left and the top. It's this one here, right? The red around it needs to be.
So can everyone see the The illustration with the green.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So what this represents is I went, and this wasn't the first time. I had to do this back in the 90s when I rezoned a couple of residential units into P for parking. That's right behind Chiba Hut. So during that experience, I had found that, I'm sorry, is everyone seeing the green?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So what this represents is I started walking the neighborhood, and the green shaded areas are people that have written documentation of approval. And in that area, it's pretty reflective of a lot of Rincon Heights. Rincon Heights, I believe, is about 25% owner occupied. And in those green shaded areas, these aren't all people that have investment properties that are not owner occupied. Tonight you heard from Lisa Thompson, you heard from Dave Chiappetta, and next to Lisa, there's a man named Larry Ledford, who I can show you he's just getting over a bout of COVID, but he wanted to speak. He's an 80-year-old man who owns 2 houses that I have his approval letter, if you would like to see it. I mean, there is overwhelming support for people that are the most affected. I mean, I don't discount anybody in the neighborhood's concerns, but I do believe that this illustration shows that I have overwhelming support for people that, when I say are the most affected, they live closest to the property. I think it'd be unfortunate. This is a development that can be iconic for everybody. This isn't something that's being thought out or planned just to appease the university or to market to the university. But what happened back in about 1996 was that the Rincon Heights neighborhood actually took my properties and took them out of the neighborhood and put them on the University of Arizona campus. So I'm actually in the legal boundaries of the University of Arizona campus. And I'm not saying that to say that I shouldn't be subject to the neighborhood's wishes. I am. I mean, I think one of the most amazing things is that we have a chance to build something here that not only increases the quality of life, but also the value of their properties. If people will be able to be within walking distance to a market, to a food and beverage operation. These are things that help to create more owner occupancy and to stabilize the neighborhood. I experienced this in Sam Hughes. When I moved into the Sam Hughes and opened my business in August 6th of 1984, Sam Hughes didn't exactly look like Sam Hughes as it looks today. And it's nothing disparaging, but there was a lot more non-owner occupied homes in the 6th and Tucson Boulevard area. I believe a project like this is something that not just is an economic engine, but once again, increases the quality of life. I am I'm kind of insulted that it was brought up that we gave no concessions. I came back and gave, there was a list of 20 concessions, and then when John Urino, when we put the zoning examiner report out, it was subject to, I believe, another 5 or 6. So there has been a lot of trade-off, and this isn't just been a one-way street. And but I do think it's got to the point. I think we've heard from all the parties, and I think that it is time for this project to go forward. And we kind of got into that maybe 9 months ago when we were just stuck. And that's when I went out, as I said earlier, and just started saying, I need to meet the neighbors, the people that are living right here. And so it's been a very positive experience. I am agreeable to the zoning examiner's request. I beg you to approve the project. I mean, this has been 38 years of work on this corner. This isn't something, I'm a local guy. Everybody in the room with me is local. There'll be local design, local landowner, local investors. This is a Tucson project. And I think that this is a chance. This is not only serving the U of A campus, and if you look at its proximity to the neighborhoods, You're on the periphery of the campus. You're serving Rincon Heights. You're serving Sam Hughes. This is a very unique opportunity, and I will build this. And when it was mentioned earlier about that, I'm a small potato. I am I'm a local businessman. I have to go out and get investors, and I will. This isn't something that, you know, I'm trying not. I'm not an Opus group from Phoenix, and I'm not trying to be disparaging, but you know, this is something that we can all be proud of, and I will continue to engage my neighbors. I think that came very clear when you were listening to Lisa Thompson and Dave, and you know, this is a project for everybody. This isn't a project just about the economic benefits of myself. You know, anytime we can create more housing, availability of more housing, you know, it may not be affordable housing, but it opens up other housing for affordable housing also. I mean, there's definitely, we've heard nothing tonight, but there's a problem with lack of housing. This is a project that will help dissipate or curtail urban sprawl. People want to live in the Midtown area. I get people, when I was out canvassing, I can put another illustration up on 3rd Street, where I've got 7 people that live in the first 2 blocks of University Boulevard off of 3rd. One gentleman who lives in the old Mayor Corbett's old house, was all excited when Richard Shankro was going to do Speedway and Campbell, because there's a lot of people, I'm 63, there's a lot of people that are older that are selling their houses and want to live in projects where they necessarily don't want to own a house now, they want to live off their profits and be close to all the activities. I mean, my family, I've got a young family. We do a lot of stuff on the campus. The university is an economic engine, and it's something that this project will help or will serve, but also serve all the neighborhood. So I just hope that you can look above in some of the personal attacks, because I don't think they're warranted. And I beg you to approve this project.
And you're not doing student housing.
Yeah, and when Steve, give an example, Steve had asked about no group dwelling, which I've agreed to. I get people that, I have ex-employees that are nurses now at UMC that say, hey, we would love to live in apartments that are close to campus, close to UMC, that aren't oriented towards student housing. Yes, it's been brought up in many discussions that just because of where this is located, there are going to be some students there, but this is not being marketed as a student housing project. And I greatly appreciate, you know, I'm grateful for what the zoning examiner is offering, and I accept it. I hope you guys will pass it tonight.
Is that it?
Yes, thank you.
So let me put some of that into context, and thank you, Scott. First of all, this is not on the U of A campus. That's incorrect. It's within the campus planning boundary. Those are 2 fundamentally different things. If it were on the U of A campus, we wouldn't be sitting here tonight, because the U of A property is not subject to city zoning. And I'll refer you back to the Honors College debacle that happened about 3 years ago, when they went into a private land deal with an out-of-state developer and intentionally took us out of the conversation. So this is not on the U of A campus. Scott, you just said you're a local guy, and this is all going to be local, and then the very next sentence, you said you're going to have to go out and get investors. Again, the same kind of word parsing that we've been going through for the last 13, 14 months on this thing. That you said you're amenable to all of the zoning examiner's recommendations, including the elimination of a Class 6 liquor license?
Yes, I have met what John Urino asked, was to eliminate any uses that would require a number 6 license. Yes. And about the investors, local investors, I'm not talking about going out and getting institutional.
Yeah, okay. So yesterday you sent something over that said that what's being eliminated is a large bar. Now it's any Class 6 use.
What was sent over there was they asked me to get rid of the requirements that what John had asked was to put in the any zoning designation or use designation that would require a number 6 license, which I did. I include bar, comma, / large bar. Those are the 2 that require a number 6 license.
So no bars, no class 6. So you can take I think you can probably take the shared screen down unless you need to revert to something, Miguel, later on. It's just, that we're. So I'm not going to walk through the whole history of this, but I will share a bit. My last comment to Scott when he called or texted or whatever a couple of weeks ago was that I think Ureno got it right. The project began as a 140-foot student housing tower with a 70-foot hotel and 50-foot retail. Scott was in consultation. This is for the benefit of the rest of the council. Scott was in consultation with the athletics department about a student athlete housing project. And Bobby Robbins had wanted a hotel on that corner since ICA and Intercollegiate Athletics told him that he couldn't use the space on the north side of 6th Street because that's part of their beach volleyball facility or staging area. I think that Mark Holman was correct when he pointed out that Ureno called out Scott and saying that the applicant did not follow the path encouraged by the University Area Plan by conducting early consultation. And so this has really been damage control ever since then. And we began meeting with Scott's design team early on, which, by the way, has changed twice, or at least been added to or created to since this began. With Rincon Heights and Sam Hughes. And we met multiple times. I think all of us probably lost track of the number of times until it got to the point where I think I ended one meeting and everybody agreed that it sounded like we were having the same conversation over and over. We've had 4 zoning examiner hearings, and so I'll give John Ureno great credit for his patience and perseverance in sending us all back to see if we could figure this out. We've gone from 140 feet to 90 feet to now to 75 feet. That's one side of the conversation. The other side of the conversation are the neighbors who live around there saying they've actually gone up from 25 feet to 75 feet. So there has been this push-pull, this give-take. What we have right now is a very red-lined pad document because of all these changes. And so whatever happens tonight, we're going to have a new pad document that's going to have to be revised to just get rid of all the redlining and the changes, and even the changes that have been agreed to here today with respect to buying into Ureno's suggestions. By the way, let's point out also for us, the council, that's pretty unprecedented for a zoning examiner to actually try and play Solomon and come up with zoning conditions. It's usually you go out and figure it out for yourself and come back when you agree on something. And so I want to credit John Ureno for paying such close attention to all of this and trying to find a way forward. How in the May 25th meeting, Scott, your team agreed to negotiating a community benefits agreement, and that was when we first heard of Lazarus Sullivan and Bangs, a new team member. How many meetings have you had to negotiate that CBA?
The CBA, the things that John Ureno requested for the rezoning have all been put into the pad. There hasn't been any items that would, as far as I know, would require a community agreement or benefits agreement at this time. Once again, I am going by the direction of what John Ureno put forth as his requirements.
Damn it.
So John Ureno was very clear in suggesting that there are certain elements of this that have to be incorporated in a CBA. He cannot mandate that. The city can't participate in that. But again, this is why this has been so frustrating, is that we seem to make an inch and then step back a foot, and then another inch and step back a foot. And I know the fatigue level that the neighbors have over this. I know, actually, frankly, your team's fatigue level over this. I want to hear what Karen has to say before I move on, though. She got her hand up.
Councilmember Ulick.
I certainly didn't mean to interrupt you, Steve. I know you've been just very honed in on this and tracking it closely. And I guess there are a couple of things that that I wanted to say. I had a real reaction to the speaker talking about how neighbors are wanting things and wanting free things, et cetera. And it's so important to remember a pad is not an entitlement. And the process is intended to engage the area in saying, here's the existing zoning, here's what a development under existing zoning would look like. I, as the owner developer, am asking for a privilege and opportunity to increase my profits that will also benefit the entire area. And that's the prospect. And it just doesn't sound like that's the approach that's been taken. And you know, I want to understand, council member, as we're discussing the zoning examiner's recommendation, does that tightly fit to the conversations and what we've all heard from people weighing in here? I'm very glad to hear about the height adjustment. And then I guess want to listen very closely to the further questions that you have regarding things that don't fall into a pad, like a benefits agreement. So I trust you, council member. I really do. I know that you thread these very, very respectfully and find the right balance on these kinds of pad requests. I'm listening closely.
So thank you for that. So I came into tonight thinking, well, you know what? Let's give it the old college try. But God, I tell you, Scott, now hearing you say that there's nothing that the zoning examiner required a CBA because he can't, and now you're saying you're kind of dancing around that. I don't see any. What am I trying to say? I don't see any value in saying to this council, hey, let's put this off for yet another 30 days so you can go back and have this come. If you haven't even had one meeting with the neighbors since May, when you guys raised the issue in, this is in, I'm gonna get their name right, CDG's June 10th report. And it says also added, conditions that are not appropriate to be added to the pad document will be incorporated into a neighborhood agreement written by Lazarus and Sylvan. So let me share this, and because I'm kind of coming to a conclusion. We made a mistake over at Opus when we said, let's approve the zoning and trust them to be able to work out a community benefits agreement. What happened was 4 weeks later, the developer came back and said, we tried, just couldn't come to agreement, and this council had no leverage, and it was done deal. I'm going to recommend that we deny the rezoning and not put them through that fire drill. And if you want to come back and start to address the community the way Urino suggested you do it, from square one, then we can have that conversation. But that CBA has to be at the front end, the tip of that spear, not at the back end as a G. Let's see if we can figure out after you give us the rezoning. So that's my recommendation, is denial.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any continued discussion from the council?
I just hope so. I just have a couple questions about that. are we going to, by denying it, does that mean the applicant has to start all over again?
Mr. Rankin can correct me, but I believe that prevents, without any substantial change to the what's being recommended, prevents a rezoning from proceeding for a year.
And Mr. Rankin has his hand up, so.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Yes, that's the question I was anticipating, so I put my hand up. A denial would mean that an application for new rezoning could not be submitted or processed for a year unless that application was a substantially different request that isn't just a replacement rezoning for what was denied.
So this is where I'm at. I'm really concerned we're missing an opportunity here. I'm not saying that I'm prepared to pass the zoning examiner's recommendation tonight, especially because there's no CBA in place. But by denying it, all the things that got done, there were periods of time in this process, it sounds like, that things did get done. So I'm worried that we're going to lose an opportunity. The other thing I'll say is that it's obvious that some of this stuff has become personal. And that's a shame. Look, I'm not interested in, I mean, I think a lot of things are about character and that's important, but I like to have faith that people are going to do what they say they're going to do. And if the CBA is in place, and even if we get a chance to, I mean, I think Everin made a really good point about some of the parking and transportation pieces that we may be able to tweak. I'd like to see that happen, but the bottom line is that if we deny now, we get nothing. We don't get any housing in this area. We don't get the grocery store. We don't get some of the things that some of the neighbors wanted. So I'm just trying to, I'm vexed, but I want to have some faith in our Tucsonans and give them one more chance. That's all. And if it doesn't come to fruition, then we'll deny it. But I don't know if I want to make that decision unilaterally tonight. I'm not prepared to do that. That's why I wanted to keep the public hearing.
Well, that's the motion, and if you had been in some of these dozen meetings, you might not be so vexed.
And that may be true. I mean, I'm not part of the process, but there are other neighbors that came and supported this. And I'm not talking about the last speaker, but I'm talking about Mr. Jerry and Miss Thompson and Cindy and Dave Chapetta, who's lived there forever. I mean, so there were other speakers who were in favor. And the other Dave, the younger guy who just moved from Sam Hughes back from, grew up there and then recently moved back there. So they were saying, hey, let's go for it. And then Everin talked about how this was an opportunity for the neighborhood. She ultimately is not sure that Scott can pull it off, but I want to try to restore faith in this process. That's kind of what I'm thinking about the other side too. I'm just, look, Steve, I understand where you're coming from, absolutely, but I know
what you're saying is fair, and I would just say this, that if I were sitting out on the east side right now, surrounded by an SR zoned lot like you guys are out there, you and Nikki, and not sitting around campus where many or most of the lots are 6,000 and 7,000 square feet, and there are 75% rentals, and some of the speakers you heard from are those landlords, I might have that different perspective too. But it is a fundamentally different conversation in this immediate area right around campus, and they are forever fighting the intrusive expansion of the U of A. And we saw it with the Honors College. That affected both wards 3 and 6 because it's right over there in Feldman's and North University. And it was completely disingenuous on the part of the university. And for Scott to say that this is a part of the university campus is simply false.
But Scott isn't one of the guys from out of town investing millions and billions of dollars. He's been here for 40 years. He's locally owned. We know where he lives. I mean, I get it, but we gotta have some faith that he can work with some folks. If he can't figure it out, he can't figure it out. But I want to give him that opportunity.
Councilmember Ulick.
Councilmember Cunningham, if you have a substitute motion that you'd like to make and have a vote on, I think that's the proper procedure. And we, you know, I don't know any other way to get at what you're trying to get at. If you want to make a substitute motion, we can. Well,
I'm not really comfortable doing that. It's not really my. It's not really my ward. I want to represent. I want to let the Steve represents the neighbors and he does his job well. So I don't want to step on any toes, but I'm trying to appeal to the idea that we continue this, but we don't have to. I mean, I'll make it. I don't know if anybody's going to support me. I think we should continue this for 30 days. Can I make that as a motion, a substitute motion?
You can make it. Do we have a second? All right, so that motion dies for lack of a second. Any other discussion on Councilmember Kozachik's motion to deny ordinance 11884?
What's the next process then for Scott Cummings?
It's denied. Starts over. Scott's got his hand.
Denied. He has to wait a year and start over.
Go ahead. I just want to set the record clear. I never said that I wouldn't do a community benefits agreement. My understanding from the zoning examiner's request, all of those things that he required are in the current PAD document. And Cindy can address the fact that when you said we have a red line, I thought there was a final revised, final PAD document. I'm not turning my back saying, I'm just telling the neighborhood, you know, no, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not aware that there was anything that I have left undone. I mean, I thought that the PAD that we put together, when it answered all of the requirements, was all that was needed. So, I mean, I would ask that, if anything, to continue it so that I can figure out what needs to be done to appease the whole question about the community benefits agreement. Because I'm not aware of anything that I'm missing that's not in the PAD. Everything that they have asked for during negotiations is in that document. If there's something missing, I'll be more than happy to do a community benefits agreement. I just need to know what it is. I mean, not the agreement, but what's missing.
Councilmember.
Ask for at least 30 days and to try to straighten it out. And if I can't, then you have more than the right to deny me. But I think at this point, I mean, I can honestly say I am a little perplexed, and I respect you all, but I think I should be given that opportunity. I mean, as I said earlier, I'm sorry, one last thing is that my conversations prior to this was that John Urino got it right. And I wasn't aware that there was anything that was left off the table, so to speak.
Okay. Councilmember Kozachik, are you ready to call for a vote? Would you like to make any comments or changes on anything? Okay.
Yes.
Yes to call for a vote?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion from council colleagues? All right. If not, just to remind everyone, we are voting on the motion, which is ordinance 11884 to deny. Mr. Clerk, roll call.
Mr. Kozachik?
Aye.
Ms. Santa Cruz?
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham? You're muted.
You're
sir.
muted, Paul.
Pass.
McSulik?
Aye.
Mr. Fimbres?
I'm gonna vote no, because I want to see it come back with some changes.
Mr. Cunningham,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lee.
Aye. So ordinance 11884 fails by a vote of 5-1. Item 10.
City Attorney, reconsideration of certain provisions of ordinance number 11880 adopted October 19th, 2021 relating to accessory dwelling units.
City Manager's communication number 348 dated November 9th is received into and made part of the record. I know that we want to have Mr. Rankin kind of kick us off on this item. So, Mr. Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Lee and members of the council. As you know, this item was put on tonight's agenda at the request of Councilmember Cunningham to allow the mayor and council to determine whether you would choose to reconsider the action that you took on October 19th with respect to ordinance 11880 relating to the accessory dwelling units, ADUs. I think a good place to start is to remind you what that action was on October 19th. At that meeting, following the public hearing on the ADU ordinance and discussion by the mayor and council, there was a vote that was approved by a vote of 6-1. Councilmember Kozaczek was a dissenting vote that approved the ordinance, but with certain specific conditions and additional direction to staff, and I'll walk through those. First, the approved motion added a 5-year sunset date to the ordinance. It required a 2-year administrative review, so it has to come back for review after 2 years, an administrative level review. Established a maximum height for the ADUs, and I'll talk more about that later because it was the subject of a specific amendment at the end of the motion. The approved motion directed staff to continue looking at solutions to create conditions for sustainable and affordable housing within city limits. Also to develop programs to provide resources and technical support to make ADUs accessible and affordable to Tucson homeowners and residents, and to pursue a pilot program to fund ADU repairs and improvements. Also to establish an amnesty program for those ADUs that were previously unpermitted, and to take steps necessary to facilitate the program, including amending development fee schedules to provide participants in that amnesty program a waiver of penalty fees for those unpermitted ADUs. So prior to the vote on the motion, there was further discussion held regarding the height issue. What would be the authorized height of an ADU? And it was recommended at the request of the motion maker, who was Councilmember Santa Cruz, that to establish an authorized height of 12 feet where the primary dwelling is 1 story, even if that primary dwelling height was less than 12 feet. So it would still allow up to 12 feet. And in those instances where there was a 2-story structure on site already, the existing primary dwelling, the authorized height would be equal to the roof, would be higher, it would be equal to the roof line of the primary dwelling unit. This recommendation was then accepted by the motion maker, Councilmember Santa Cruz, and accepted by the second and was incorporated into the motion. So that's how height was addressed. The clerk and I both went back and reviewed the recording of the meeting earlier today to confirm that that's how the height issue was addressed. So that takes us to tonight's item. Under the item as scheduled for the Mayor and Council consideration tonight, the Mayor and Council can choose to reconsider its action as taken on October 19th and as I just described. The specific request submitted by Councilmember Cunningham was to reconsider that action from a couple weeks ago so that new direction could be considered relating to 3 specific topics. The first being the maximum size of the accessory dwelling units. We just lost our lights, give me a moment. So the first issue would be with respect to the maximum size of the ADU on lots that are over 8,500 square feet. The second would be the maximum size of ADUs on lots that are less than that, less than 8,500 square feet. And third was to be able to consider adding an owner occupancy requirement for a year for the primary dwelling unit. Pursuant to the Mayor and Council rules and regulations, section 1L, a motion to reconsider is in order if any member who voted with the prevailing side moves for reconsideration of the prior motion, and Councilmember Cunningham was with the prevailing side. Additionally, there's a UDC provision that actually applies here because this was a text amendment to the code. And under the relevant UDC provision, any decision to reconsider an approval of a text amendment must occur within 30 days of the original decision. And the reason for that is because as a zoning code amendment, it will go into effect 30 days after it was adopted, unless the decision is made prior to that to reconsider. Reconsideration is in fact a two-step process, as we saw earlier tonight. First, a motion is made by a member who voted with the prevailing side to reconsider. Any member of the council can offer a second to the motion. You don't have to be on the prevailing side in the previous action. And then all members get to vote on the decision. An approval of a motion to reconsider takes 4 affirmative votes for it to be approved. And that is the action. That's the level of action that's on the agenda for tonight. If such a motion is in fact made under this item and it does prevail, the effect would be that the body will have reopened the matter for new action. It doesn't in and of itself create the changes that are the basis for the proposal. That would have to be considered at a later time. With respect to a code amendment such as this one, if in fact the earlier action is opened back up by the approval of a motion to reconsider, then the actual reconsideration with the proposed changes would be placed on a regular session agenda, which could not occur before the December 7th, 2021 regular agenda. And the reason for that is because it would have to be noticed in the same way that the prior proceeding was noticed as a zoning text amendment. So it requires a 15-day minimum notice through the newspaper, et cetera. And so we can't do that before the December 7th meeting at the earliest. And so one final note, even if the Mayor and Council does not move forward to reconsider and the ordinance and its amendments go into place as approved by the earlier motion, it doesn't mean that the provisions as approved can never be changed. The Mayor and Council retain legislative authority to make future code amendments and text amendments. And UDC text amendments can be revised through the normal legislative process for future code amendments. One issue to consider, however, in that eventuality is that future text amendments would be subject to review and scrutiny under Prop 207 with respect to if future code amendments reduce property rights beyond something that you've already approved in such a way that it reduces property values, then that would have to be factored into a future code amendment decision. So that's the information I have to share with you all. I'm happy to answer any questions as this moves forward.
Thank you, Mr. Rankin. I want to see if Councilmember Cunningham is the one who brought it up, wants to kick off this portion of the conversation.
I got some input after we voted. Some folks in a couple neighborhoods in my ward, but also some of the folks that we've talked to over the years, and it felt a little rushed. It's really important we get this right. As far as the owner occupancy for 1 year provision that's in my memo, I'm not even sure I want to do that. It's just something that's not really enforceable. So I'm not really interested as much in that piece and changing that piece. I think the size piece, a lot of me is, I kind of want to hear a little bit more from both sides about it. I think that, ultimately we're talking about 150 square feet in the maximum size. and people can still build sleepers and garages in backyards. So the 70% roofing cover is still kind of prevails over that. It's really going to be hard. The bigger part of this, I think, for me, is the relation to what size you can do on your lot size. It's that shift from 7,000 to 8,500, and that's goes back to, really, it relates to the discussion we just had with another neighborhood area, another university area neighborhood. I don't represent that area, and I didn't really get the gist of all the different nuances that some of those midtown areas had until really after the fact. So that's kind of where we're at. That's why I think we should reconsider. Under no circumstances do I want to repeal the ADU, or I want this one. I'm looking at this one tweak because I think it makes sense for a lot of neighborhoods, and I think it's benign to the ordinance as a whole. As a matter of fact, I think this tweak, another thing that we may want to put into this tweak is enable for some of the folks who want it in tighter fits, who want to be able to do second stories. I'd like to see that on a lot with a first story primary residence. I'd love to see a variance process for that within this ADU ordinance. So I think I just want some things that we can get right. The last thing is exactly what the city attorney said. I'd rather start at 8,500, 850 than 7,001, because if we change it in 2 years, we can get 207. We're subject to a 207 complaint. But if we start at 7.1 and go to 85,850, we're subject to 207. If we start at 85,850 and go to 7.1 in 2 years, we're not subject to 207. So those are my thoughts on this. I'll listen to the rest of the discussion from my colleagues.
Mr. Rankin, before we jump over to Councilmember Ulick, can you give us some clarification on the 207 item that Councilmember Cunningham was just speaking of?
Sure. Basically what Proposition 207, which is codified as the Arizona Private Property Protection Act, says that when a governing body adopts a new land use provision that is more restrictive than what was previously in place, an affected property owner can have a claim for compensation based on the diminution of the reduction in value of their property by the imposition of a new, more restrictive land use provision. So the concern when you create a new, more permissive land use regulation is that if you ever want to walk it back, then you are opening yourself up to potential 207 claims. One thing that the council did, though, was that you included a sunset provision in the ordinance as adopted. And one of the reasons we recommend that when you are actually expanding land use rights is that that acts as a cutoff. So the expanded rights die with the sunset date unless they are then renewed later by a subsequent mayor and council. So there would be an opportunity at a minimum at the 5-year mark to revisit any of those issues without having that same Prop 207 exposure.
Thank you, Mr. Rankin. Councilmember Ulick.
Thank you. I can hear in Councilmember Cunningham's comments the same challenges with this item that I experienced as well in our first consideration. I think that there are so many pieces to this, and unlike the item that we just attended to with a pad on a corner in a particular area that's most likely to have more localized impact, and I think Councilmember Kozaczek made this point even at the last meeting, this is a UDC text amendment that does apply citywide. And so for me, it's a challenge to digest, perfectly reasonable input from such a diverse city, right? Take into account university area neighborhoods, Barrio Blue Moon, North Dodge neighborhood, look at the stats for the ward and the lot sizes, how many really are at over the marks that we included. So part of it for me is recognizing that we have a planning commission and a staff who have expertise beyond certainly what I have, and who engaged in a very lengthy process the commission came to a unanimous recommendation after that process, which is not that common for a unanimous decision. And I believe they grappled with many of the things, Councilmember Cunningham, that you're pointing out, and many more, quite frankly. And I struggled with each and every one of the items before our consideration, including owner occupancy. I was very much reassured to understand, and I know Ellen Wheeler spoke during call to the audience, the group dwelling ordinance does apply to the lot. And that's a huge protection from, I think, one of the key concerns related to over-densifying the university area with students, because that group dwelling ordinance prevents more than 4 unrelated individuals from living on a lot or in a structure, which was for the mini dorms. I mean, we worked hard on that together. So I am inclined not to vote for reconsideration because I believe that we're not the planning commission. We are not, well, it is our job to try and thread this needle, just as we did on the last item. However, I represent right now for a month, and if this is reconsidered, it will be the elected representative. I represent these university area neighborhoods, as well as such a diverse set of neighborhoods in Ward 3. What I came to believe is that the protections in place, the group dwelling ordinance, the existing configurations of lots, not in all areas, but in most, the fact that these need to be in the back of a property of the main unit, as well as the height restrictions and the sunset that we adopted. I feel like we did the best that we could to serve this need citywide. And so I will definitely be listening closely to colleagues. It's a difficult decision, and but that's where I sit right now.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I have a question.
Okay, let's go to Councilmember Kozaczek real quick. He's had his hand up for a moment, and then I'll come back to you, Councilmember Van Bryce.
Okay, thanks. So I respect all that, and I respect the tenor of our conversation here. This whole process hasn't, not among this group, but this whole process hasn't always been that. I too am concerned about the citywide impacts, and my bias, of course, is to focus on the area that is going to be the most negatively impacted and begin at that stage and then work up from there. And that's the reason I agree with what Paul said, is that let's leave ourselves room to expand this later if this proves to be an unfounded concern. But my concerns are not speculative, because I see it happening. We just talked about Rincon Heights, it's Pie Allen, it's West University, it's Iron Horse, it's Jefferson Park, it's Feldman's, it's the neighborhoods immediately surrounding campus. that have the small lot sizes, the small primary dwelling units that will be the most negatively impacted when, not if, the iBuyers, the investors, come in and do exactly what some of the developers who spoke in the previous item are doing around campus. With respect to the group dwelling ordinance, the sad reality is it's virtually unenforceable because nobody from the city is going up to people's doors and knocking on doors saying, "Prove to me that you're not related." We have had literal compounds within the Rincon Heights neighborhood. Sorry to keep reverting back to them, but that's simply where this one existed, where we were told by our code people and by the city attorney's office is there's nothing we can do because we can't demand to see their leases and all of that. I don't much care about the owner occupancy piece of this thing because I think if we adjust the sizes, then we will have achieved the goal of providing a disincentive to people coming in and doing what we're concerned about happening. But there are plenty of examples of 1 and 2 bedroom casitas. There's the new one that's coming in out in Ward 5 called the New Cabana at the Bridges. They've got 828 square foot 2 bedroom apartments that are address that missing middle, the $1,000 a month round numbers rent. You put 1,000 square foot building on a lot that now you have 2 of them on that same lot right around campus. That is not going to be affordable housing. So I am simply saying, let's adjust the size. Nobody on this council is opposed to the ADU concept. Nobody. And so for some of the speakers to come up and say, you're trying to throw ADUs out, that's simply not true. All I am saying is adjust the size down, tweak it down so that we are not providing that incentive to the out-of-state developers that we are seeing right now. The Republic had an article last week that said how iBuyers and investors are shutting the door on first-time home buyers in Metro Phoenix. It's happening here too. The Star had an article about a week ago that said somebody just came in and bought 50 parcels. So this is not about trying to stop ADUs. It's simply saying, let's respect the areas that are going to be the most negatively impacted by the larger sizes and leave ourselves the room to expand upwards if we wind up saying, gee, we dialed it back too much, because we can't do it in the reverse later on, or we're subject to 207 challenges.
Councilmember Finbrace.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to know, because I've heard different conflict stories from neighborhoods in Miles and San Antonio neighborhoods. What is the status of the Sunshine Mile overlay that with the passage of the ADU ordinance, how it affects it? Because we specifically put items into that motion that couldn't suffice for the neighborhoods. So could somebody tell me that? Because I've been asking this question and nobody's been able to give it to me. Mr. Rankin?
Councilmember
Lee and Councilmember Finbrace, the Sunshine Overlay completely separate from the ADU text amendments. So the ADU text amendments provide what they provide, assuming they're not reconsidered, by their own terms. So it's a completely separate legislative enactment from the Sunshine Mile, which is an overlay, which is an actual zoning district that applies to its own boundaries in the manner that was approved by the mayor and council. So this does not change any of what was approved for the Sunshine Mile overlay.
Okay, good. So then you're telling me that the motion, the specific items we put in there for the neighborhoods will stay in place?
Yes, they would. In fact, if the motion here, that we're here for tonight is simply on whether to open up through reconsideration this question about the ADUs and specifically the areas that Councilmember Cunningham has identified with respect to the size of the units.
Thank you.
Councilmember Santa Cruz.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Lee. I'm exhausted to continue to talk in circles around this item. It's a mistake to bring this ordinance up for reconsideration after the year-plus process that staff has undergone with the public, and having, having these conversations over the past year that all of a sudden, at the 13th, 14th hour here after we've already passed it, want to circumvent, a democratic process that already took place in front of us, and make policy on the exception to the rule. And so I'm feeling really frustrated about this, because we are thinking of, yes, the worst case scenario and trying to restrict around that, not realizing that we can also have that negative impact of not making it as accessible and affordable for everyday families to be able to put an ADU, because we're going to put so many restrictions that it's only going to make it accessible and easier for developers or people that can pay to allow for that to happen, to be able to develop an ADU. And so I think it's important that we honor the process that's happened with all our 7 public meetings, our commission hearings that include, as shared before, our planning and development commission and our commission on equitable housing, who all unanimously voted for this. I don't support the size reductions. Not everyone is going to build a 1,000-square-foot home in their backyard, but the flexibility to do so is important, so this type of housing can become a viable option for a family with children. So that's the thing that we're not thinking of, what's the difference? What's 150, square foot difference when it's like an extra room or extra space for a growing family with children, or being able to have grandparents or elderly folks, in that residence. I think that, we have to be serious about addressing the housing shortage in Tucson, and we need to recognize that this is, yes, a small but first incremental step in addressing that, and that we have so much more work to do. And so I want to get to all the other housing affordability and housing stock that we need. And it's unfortunate that we get so wrapped up around this particular issue, and that I think it's important, again, we honor the process, we try it out, we learn. That's why we included the sunset date in there to give us some coverage, and then we're able to make a decision at that point about what worked and what didn't, and pivot from there. But to come from at this point, at this late in the process, trying to go back on that process that we already had, I think it's such a waste of our time, and I would not vote to bring this back to consideration.
Okay, seeing no other hands, this is really tough because everything every one of you all said, I completely agree with. It's a really tough spot that we're in. I do have somewhat of a clarifying question for probably Mr. Rankin. Obviously, I have no idea how this vote is going to go, but if reconsideration does not pass, is it true that we can still, as Councilmember Santa Cruz says, as we learn and we see patterns and behaviors, can this be brought back, specifically size, height, whatever the specific issue is at hand, to address in like a study session or regular session without opening up the whole item for reconsideration? I just want to understand, like, we're not boxing ourselves in, that the option is still there, right? If we realize that we really need to change something, if reconsideration does not pass.
So, Vice Mayor, yes, if reconsideration fails tonight, then what was approved on October 19th goes into effect and on November 19th or 20th, whatever the 30-day mark is, and it will not be subject to any further reconsideration. The legislation, though, would be subject to future amendment by future mayor and council. The only additional consideration is that if future changes are such that it reduces property values, then it could trigger some claims for compensation. So speculative to guess what those changes might be, et cetera. But we would address those issues at that time.
Okay. With that, what's the council's pleasure?
Your Honor, I move the mayor and council reconsider its approval of ordinance 11-180 relating to ADUs as modified and conditioned on the motion approved October 19th. The purpose of the reconsideration is to address the issues of maximum size. That's it.
So
That's my motion.
You're pulling out the owner occupancy piece.
I just don't think it.
No, that's fine. I'm just asking.
I just don't. I don't like. You know what? I don't like the owner occupancy piece.
Okay, I agree. I agree. Second.
Okay, we have a motion. Second. Any last minute discussion before we go to roll call? All right, Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
Mr. Cunningham,
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek,
Aye.
Ms. Santa Cruz,
No.
Mr. Fimbres,
Aye.
McSulik,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Lee.
Aye. I'm counting in my head. Four.
Motion passed 4-2, Your
Motion
Honor.
passes 4-2 to reconsider. Item 11.
And just if I can jump in, Mayor Pro Tem. So as I mentioned, what we will do is we will schedule the actual proposed revisions for the December 7 meeting, and so that the department can carry out the appropriate notices in advance.
Thank you for confirming that, Mr. Rankin. All right, item 11.
Labor Agreement Extension with Tucson Police Officers Association. Resolution number 23417.
City Manager's Communication number 349 dated November 9th is received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, you're requested to read Resolution 23417 by number and title only.
Resolution number 23417 relating to employee relations, authorizing the city manager to execute a labor agreement between the City of Tucson and Tucson Police Officers Association.
What is the council's pleasure?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I move to pass and adopt resolution 23417.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? I see, let's see, Mr. Rankin's hand in the air, virtually.
Virtually. Thank you, Mayor. You're all probably getting tired of listening to me tonight, but one thing I wanted to point out with respect to the term, as the agreement provides that the term, if this is approved, would extend till June 30th of 2025. The resolution that approves the MOU includes the provision that the TPOA would also have the option to request two additional one-year extensions, which actually was a feature of the prior MOU as well. It wouldn't bind the city to agree, or the mayor and council or the manager to agree to those extensions, but it would give the option to TPOA to request those extensions. The TPOA additionally has asked that it be memorialized in the MOU itself, that if neither party requests to re-engage, to invoke the meet and confer process prior to the expiration of the term, then those one-year renewals would be automatic. So in other words, if neither party raises an objection or asks that the agreement be reopened, then those one-year renewals would be automatic. I'm comfortable with that because the city and the management would still have the opportunity prior to the expiration of the term to say, let's reinitiate the meet and confer process to negotiate a new agreement. If if the council is comfortable with that language, it would be accomplished by adding new language into Article 10 of the proposed MOU that simply states that if in the event that neither party, meaning the labor organization and city, provides notification of intent to meet and confer as provided herein, the provisions of the agreement automatically are extended for up to 2 additional one-year terms.
Thank you, Mr. Rankin. Any other discussion? Okay, don't see any hands, so Mr. Clerk will go to roll call.
So this would be to approve resolution 23417 with the amended language to the MOU. Mr. Fimbres?
Aye.
Mixulik?
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham?
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek?
Aye.
Ms. Santa Cruz?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lee?
Aye. Resolution 23417 passes by a vote of 6-0. Item 12.
Elections, canvassing of the returns and declaring the results for the city's general and special elections held November 2nd, 2021, resolution number 23418.
City Manager's Communication number 344 dated November 9th is received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, you're requested to read resolution 23418 by number and title only.
Resolution number 23418 relating to elections, canvassing the returns and declaring the results of the general election for the offices of council members from wards 3, 5, and 6, and the special election for propositions 206 and 410 held in the city of Tucson, Arizona, November 2nd, 2021.
What is the council's pleasure?
Madam Mayor,
Your Honor, I
I
move that we move the canvas.
to pass resolution 23418. I second it.
Okay, motion and second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Let's go to roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Santa Cruz?
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham?
Aye.
Mixulik?
Aye.
Mr. Fimbres?
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek?
Aye. Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lee?
Aye. Resolution 23418 passes by a vote of 6-0. Item 13, we made it, Roger.
Adjournment, Your Honor.
Council will stand adjourned. The next regularly scheduled meeting will be on Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night, Your Honor.